Hey guys, tonight, we're stepping into a place where time seems frozen in mud, misery, and monotony. The kind of place where your boots are never truly dry, the sky almost never opens up, and the ground beneath you seems to tremble endlessly with distant violence. This is no dream. This is no exaggeration. You are on the Western Front during the First World War. And here, you are being assigned what soldiers bitterly refer to as your own private patch of despair, a trench that barely fits your frame, hacked into the earth by men long past exhaustion, already slick with standing water that reeks of rot. You probably won't survive this. That's not meant to scare you. It's just the odds. But before we get ahead of ourselves, take a second to like this video and subscribe, if and only if you find comfort or curiosity in what I do here. I take these old, awful histories and wrap them in sleep. I read every single comment, so let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always find it fascinating who ends up falling asleep to the quiet horrors of trench warfare at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now is the time to dim your lights. Let your room settle into silence. Maybe flip on a fan if you enjoy that soft mechanical hum that dulls the edges of your thoughts. Let the static comfort you as we begin tonight's journey, slowly, gently. One grim step at a time, you arrive under cover of night, when the sky is thick with low cloud and shadow. Your boots crunch against the gravel, and every step feels louder than it should in this haunted landscape. A young officer, barely older than you, gestures silently and leads you along a winding, narrow path. It's known as a communication trench, though it communicates little beyond the suggestion that you've entered something unnatural. It bends sharply, zigging and zagging like a scar through the earth. The deeper you go, the more you notice the stifling air, dense with the smell of soaked soil, acrid tobacco, sweat, and something else. Something vaguely sweet and terribly wrong. You don't dare name it. Without ceremony, you're handed a Lee Enfield rifle. It's still crusted with grime, the wood slick with damp, and there is no time for cleaning. You are nudged forward, toward the fire trench where the rest of your unit waits, hunched like shadows caught between worlds. No one greets you. No one smiles. A soldier near the entrance looks up from his battered tin cup, steam curling from what might be tea. His eyes pass over you with the tired detachment of someone who has seen too many new faces vanish by morning. Another sits nearby, threading a bit of string through his calloused fingers, knotting it with a mechanical repetition that speaks more of coping than boredom. The quiet is not peaceful. It's thick, oppressive, full of things unspoken. You feel it immediately. Someone here, maybe even you, will not see another dawn. This place is known as the fire trench. It is the edge of all things. Just 20 yards ahead is no man's land, a battered purgatory riddled with craters and ghosts. Beyond that lie the German lines. Everything around you is wet, splintered, and collapsing in slow motion. The trench walls are held in place by warped wooden boards, known as revetments, though even these are bowing under the strain. You spot a periscope protruding just above the trench lip. No one ever looks over the edge with their own eyes. If they do, they don't get a second chance. The mud is not just mud. It behaves as if alive, pulling at your boots with every step. It sticks and sucks and does its best to eat you whole. You are told, quite sternly, never to lean on the trench walls. The waterlogged soil could give way without warning, and the next tremor from artillery could drop the entire section into itself. Still, by instinct, you press your back to the wood and hope for a moment's dryness. It is pointless. Your uniform is already soaked, and it will remain that way for days. Somewhere in the distance, a low, steady growl begins. It vibrates in your feet before it reaches your ears. It is not thunder. The officer mutters that it's artillery, ours, probably firing from behind the lines. No one reacts with relief. The tea in the tin cup shivers slightly. Everyone has learned that our guns have a mind of their own and sometimes fall short, your first task arrives without introduction. A sandbag is shoved into your arms. You might imagine it's for sleeping, for cushioning your miserable little dugout. It is not. You are here to work. Stack the sandbags. Reinforce the parapet. Plug the holes. It is a never-ending ritual of labor, moving heavy, wet sacks from one soggy spot to another. The ropes scratch at your fingers, your shoulders ache from lifting, and already your skin is raw. You move through sludge and shadow, silently falling in with the rhythm of men who have done this 1,000 times and expect to do it 1,000 more. Historians still argue over whether trench systems actually reduced casualties or simply prolonged agony. Regardless, each trench follows a bleak pattern. Fire step. Duckboard. Parapet. Parados. The vocabulary of suffering has been standardized. You glance downward and notice the duckboards, the planks that run along the trench floor. They are meant to keep your feet out of the water. But the water is winning. Beneath the boards lies a foul soup of unknown depth, a mix of urine, rain, old blood, and everything else that has leaked from the living and the dead. You are warned not to step off the boards. That's how you lose your toes. Or your life. Depending on the depth, one of the older soldiers whispers that a man was lost last week. Just like that. The trench gave way during a storm, and before anyone could dig him out, all that remained was his helmet, floating quietly in a pool of brown water. You hope it's a joke. You offer a nervous smile. No one returns it. Rumors circulate with more energy than the men themselves. Someone says the Germans have dry trenches, built with clever engineering and reinforced walls. Another insists the French have managed to hide wine cellars underground. You suspect both claims are fantasies, but they offer a brief escape. In a place like this, even a lie can be a kind of mercy. Your sleeping space is eventually revealed to you. It is a shelf, hacked into the wall with barely enough width to lie down. They call it a dugout. This one is more like a shallow grave. You settle into it, curl your body into the smallest shape it can make, and feel the slow drip of water tapping rhythmically on your cheek. A rat, huge and fearless, scurries across your chest. You jolt upright. No one looks. No one speaks. They have learned to coexist with the rats. You will too. Your stomach grumbles, hollow and hopeful. A cold tin of bully beef is passed around, followed by a hard biscuit that could just as easily be used to patch a hole in the trench wall. You gnaw at it, trying not to break a tooth, trying not to taste it too deeply. Then you hear it. A strange, haunting sound that winds through the air like a ghost trying to whistle. You ask what it is. An older soldier answers without looking up. Count, he says. 1, 2, 3, the shell hits, the explosion is sudden and merciless. The ground leaps. Dirt crashes down from above. You tumble sideways, ears ringing, chest tightening. For a moment, the air tastes like metal. You look for blood, but there is none. It's in the air. In the soil. In everything, then, just as suddenly, it is quiet again. You are told this is normal. You will come to expect it. Artillery is the soundtrack of this life, the steady percussion of each mealtime, each sleepless night. Some learn to ignore it. Others cannot. They jump at every creak, flinch at every rumble. They call it shell shock now. Back then, it was just seen as weakness. No one understood it. No one could help. Tonight, someone in your unit will not survive to see the next sunrise. No one says who. No one needs to. The odds are always shifting. Always hunting. You try not to let it settle in your chest as you pull your damp coat tighter around your body and prepare for sleep. If sleep will come at all, the stars are faint above, barely shimmering through a veil of smoke and mist. You shut your eyes anyway. And the lullaby begins, the endless drip of water, the scratch of rats in the dark. The coughing of a man who should be resting but is still on watch. Far away, another shell falls, and just like that, for now at least, you are home. You wake suddenly, your heart beating just a little faster than it should. There's a sound, a faint, rapid patter on your helmet. Something small and quick, like claws scuttling. You freeze in the dark, your eyes wide even though you can't see much of anything. Maybe it was a rat. Maybe it was just your nerves. You try to convince yourself it was nothing, but deep down, you know it was probably real. Either way, you're awake now, and sleep will not be coming back. Morning in the trenches doesn't arrive gently. There is no soft light breaking through curtains, no cheerful birds announcing the dawn. There is only a voice, hoarse and commanding, echoing up and down the trench with a force that cuts through the fog of sleep. Stand to. It shouts, and the sound ricochets off the walls like a bullet. You jerk upright too fast, smacking your elbow against the cold, damp wall behind you. The pain is immediate, sharp, and real, but there's no time to dwell on it. Stand to arms. It means that every man must climb the fire step at the first trace of daylight. Rifles are loaded. Bayonets are fixed. There are no questions asked. No one hesitates. You do it because this is the time when attacks are most likely. It is a tradition that has nothing to do with ceremony and everything to do with survival. Dawn is when the enemy might choose to strike, slipping through the mist before anyone can react, as you climb into position. The world begins to change. Visibility sneaks in slowly, creeping like something guilty. First there is only a faint suggestion of light, a dim blue-gray hue washing over the horizon. Then you begin to make out shapes, wires twisted into cruel patterns, posts snapped like twigs, the eerie silhouettes of the fallen, still tangled in the barbed wire just beyond the trench. This is no man's land, and it has not changed since yesterday. Your fingers are stiff from the cold. Your joints ache. Your eyes burn with fatigue. But you stare into the stillness, watching, waiting, trying not to blink too long. Nothing moves out there. Not yet. When stand-to is finally over and the sky shifts from foggy blue to an uninspired, ash-colored gray, the routines of trench life begin. Hygiene, or something loosely resembling it, comes next. A battered, dented pail of water is passed around. The water is tepid and brownish, barely enough to rinse a spoon, let alone refresh a face. A corporal, wearing a grin far too amused for the hour, claims he saw a toe floating in it last week. You hope he's joking. You dip 2 fingers in, splash your cheeks, and pretend it helps. There is no towel, of course. You let your face air dry as you reach for your boots. Toothbrushes are rare and considered a luxury. Soap is practically a myth. Instead, you scrape at your skin with a bit of rag or your sleeve, and you scrub your boots with a filthy cloth that's probably been used for a dozen other things. The grime from yesterday hasn't gone anywhere, so you accept that it's a part of you now. It becomes your second skin, your armor of filth and fatigue. Then breakfast arrives, if it can be called that. A cook, or someone pretending to be one, slops a watery mixture into a dented tin. It's meant to be porridge, though it's more of a warm paste. Tea follows, if you can call it that. It's a liquid the color of dishwater with the flavor of something boiled far too long. And then there's the biscuit. They call it dog biscuit, and that isn't a joke or a nickname. Even the rats refuse to eat it. You chew, slowly, jaw aching from the effort, and try not to think about flavor. There's none to be found anyway. Speaking of rats, you've now officially met your new neighbors, and they have no interest in introductions. These aren't tiny, skittish pests. These are bloated, bold creatures, thick with stolen calories. Some of them are nearly the size of house cats, their glossy eyes gleaming with a kind of awful intelligence. One drags at a sock hanging from a soldier's foot. The man doesn't move. He doesn't even look down. Rats are simply part of life here, as present and permanent as the mud and the guns. You're warned, often and urgently, to keep your boots on when you sleep and your food tucked out of reach. If you don't, you might wake up to find bite marks on your toes, or worse, discover an entire rat family has taken up residence beside you. Letters from soldiers mention these encounters often. One particularly chilling account describes rats stripping a corpse down to the boots overnight. It sounds exaggerated, but after a few nights here, you begin to believe it. You begin to believe anything. After the meager breakfast, trench maintenance begins. Again. You are handed a sandbag. Again. And then a spade. The wall ahead is beginning to sag, the earth behind it bulging from water and weight. Your job is simple: dig, lift, stack, repeat. The ground beneath your boots is slick and shifting. The mud behaves like a living thing, its consistency changing with each step. Sometimes it's as thick as batter, clinging in clumps. Other times, it's thin and soupy, splashing up with every movement. You try not to fall. Falling means wet sleeves, lost tools, maybe even a twisted ankle. None of which you can afford. Mid-morning brings weapons inspection. Your rifle, which served as your pillow last night, is pulled apart and scrutinized. There's no clean water to wash it, no fresh cloth to polish it, and your hands are too numb to be precise. Still, the officer expects perfection. He examines the barrel like he's handling something delicate and irreplaceable. If there's dirt inside, you'll be punished with extra duties. If it jams when you need it, you'll be punished with something far worse. This is the equation. Clean equals survival, then comes bayonet drill. Yes, even here. Even in this narrow, soggy trench. Because one day, likely sooner than you'd prefer, someone will blow a whistle and shout for you to go over the top. And when that happens, you will need to use that long blade at the end of your rifle in the most brutal way imaginable. The officer calls out the commands with the cadence of a marching band conductor. Advance. Lunge. Recover. You obey, jabbing into the air with mechanical rhythm, your blade slicing through fog and flies. You are practicing how to kill someone, standing next to a latrine, ankle deep in mud. A brief interruption comes in the form of mail. Letters from home are passed out like treasure, each one carrying the weight of another world. Some are stained with perfume. Others are crumpled, bearing the scent of kitchens and candle wax. You read yours slowly. It might be from your sister, or your wife, or someone you barely remember but once kissed beneath a lamppost. It doesn't matter. It says the tomatoes are growing well this year. You read that sentence 3 times, you try to write back. You crouch in a corner that's mostly dry. You grip a stubby pencil in fingers that don't quite work anymore. The paper smells like grease and gun oil, and your words are slow to come. You tell lies. You say that you're fine. You say the food is decent. You say you miss home. You say you're sleeping well. You don't mention the rats. You don't mention the man who died in his sleep. Some truths do not belong on paper. There is something resembling camaraderie in the trenches. Not friendship, not exactly, but a shared understanding of misery. You wouldn't choose to sit beside this man in a pub, but you'd probably haul him to safety if the trench took a direct hit. Probably. Most of the time. Laughter breaks out, rare and strange. A soldier tells a joke. It makes no real sense. Why did the German wear 2 jackets? Why? In case he got cold feet. No one understands it, but everyone laughs anyway. It feels good. It feels like something normal. By midday, your skin is sticky with sweat, despite the lingering cold. Your uniform clings to you like soggy cardboard. You think about resting, but the trench never fully rests. Somewhere, someone is digging. Somewhere else, someone is swearing. And not far from you, someone is crying quietly, head turned toward the wall. Your sergeant catches a private drifting off during watch. He starts to shout, but the words trail off. His voice cracks. He stares into space, then lowers himself into the mud and doesn't speak again. You stare too. At the walls, the wires, the fragments of cans. At the sky, you wait, because waiting is one of the main ingredients of life here. Waiting for orders. Waiting for rations. Waiting for letters. Waiting for the next shell. Waiting for it to be over. There's a saying you've heard more than once. Months of boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror. Today is one of the long, boring months. But the terror never feels far, and then it happens. A voice yells. Gas. You panic. Your hands move, but not fast enough. You fumble with the mask, your fingers clumsy, your breath caught in your throat. You know the drill. You've practiced this. But no drill prepares you for the fear. You pull the mask over your face, your breath hot and rapid inside. The rubber smells of sweat, fear, and chemicals. Moments pass. The all clear is given. Just fog, they say. Everyone tries to laugh. A few succeed, but it's thin and forced. Because next time, it might not be fog. It might be the real thing. Mustard gas. Chlorine. Phosgene. Something new. Something worse. And if you aren't quick enough, your lungs will burn and bubble, and you'll fall to your knees, drowning in air. Some go blind. Some go mad. You wonder how many seconds you really have when the warning comes. Dinner arrives like an afterthought. More tea, more biscuits, and a slice of something gray. Could be beef. Could be horse. Could be something left in a tin too long. You chew without asking, and then the sun disappears, night falls, and the trench changes. Voices drop to a whisper. The wind picks up. The shadows deepen. The rats move more boldly now. The lice in your collar seem to grow more active, each itch a reminder of how much of your body is no longer your own. You lie down in your narrow dugout, rifle cradled tightly against your chest. It is your only comfort, your only security. You close your eyes, but sleep feels distant. Every creak, every whisper, every breath around you is suspicious. Tomorrow, you will wake up and do it all over again. You're beginning to understand that the trench isn't just a location on a map or a physical boundary in a war. It's far more than that. It is a condition of the body, a pressure on the mind, and a slow deterioration of anything clean or whole. It's not only mud under your boots or rain in your collar, it's a damp, creeping presence that seeps inward. Over time, it doesn't just soak through your socks. It begins to erode your spirit. And today, something about the way your toes feel, an irritating, deep itch with no relief, tells you something is wrong. You peel your socks away, slowly, carefully, the fabric sticking to your skin like wet gauze. What you find beneath is not comforting. The sight makes your stomach twist. Your feet have taken on a grotesque, bloated appearance. The skin is pale, almost white, and covered in deep, wrinkled folds. They look like they belong to something pickled, something long forgotten in a jar. The surface is puffy, soft, and when you press a finger against the top of your foot, it leaves an imprint that doesn't spring back. One of your toes is starting to turn a darker shade at the tip. You prod it gently, but there's no feeling. No pain. No warmth. Just numbness. Just silence. Congratulations. You've officially been introduced to trench foot. There's nothing dramatic about it. No screams, no searing pain, no sharp injury. It arrives quietly. Like the weather, and settles in. At first, it's only a numbness, an odd coldness that feels like nothing at all. That's the danger. Trench foot isn't a cut or a bruise. It's decay. It's rot. The flesh softens from constant dampness and exposure until it simply gives up. Toes begin to blacken. Skin peels away. Nerves die. Blood stops moving. Eventually, bones may show. It is a quiet unmaking of the body. Soldiers talk about waking up to discover their boots soaked in blood, the remains of their toes still inside. It's a tale often shared, sometimes whispered as warning, sometimes laughed off. But always remembered, the cure is simple in theory and impossible in practice. Dry socks. That's it. Foot inspections, twice daily, to make sure your toes are still the same color they were this morning. Rub them with whale oil to protect against the moisture. That's the official line. But in a place where it rains from the sky, leaks through the walls, and rises up from the very ground beneath your boots, where exactly are you supposed to find anything dry? You wring your socks out over a small fire, watching steam curl up like breath from a dying animal. For a brief moment, you let yourself pretend you're in a spa. That's what the others call it. A joke. A lie. A desperate attempt to laugh through it, but even as your socks sizzle, there's more to contend with. And that's when you feel the itching again. The lice have returned. No, they never really left. They are always here. They live with you now. In your collar, your waistband, the seams of your shirt, the folds behind your ears. They are smaller than the rats but no less tenacious. You scratch absent-mindedly, then frantically, and then deliberately. You dig at your scalp until your nails are dirty and red. You scratch until your skin breaks. The grime under your fingernails becomes something thick and unnameable. The army does offer a solution. Crude but effective in its own way. You take a candle and run the flame slowly along every seam in your uniform. It's a delicate art. Too fast, and you miss them. Too slow, and you risk burning the fabric. But when you do it right, you hear it. A faint pop. A small burst. The sound of lice being roasted alive. It brings an odd satisfaction, a moment of revenge. But the victory is brief. Within the hour, they are back. They always come back. Historians still debate whether lice were more damaging to morale than the enemy itself. Some argue that the constant irritation, the endless scratching, the crawling sensation under the skin drove men to the edge of madness. Others insist the lice were strangely comforting. At least if they were still biting, it meant you were still alive. Either way, they are unforgettable. Their presence becomes part of your identity. You will always remember the smell of sweat, mold, and kerosene. You will remember the way a fellow soldier once peeled off his shirt and watched, almost absent-mindedly, as dozens of lice scattered toward the seams, like commuters rushing to catch the last train. You try to joke about it. As everyone does. There's a song you hear from time to time, half sung and half groaned, the old battalion, all dressed in rags. They used to wear trousers, but now they wear bags. It's nonsense, but nonsense helps. Humor softens the edges. But the itching remains. You still scratch. After the usual stand-to and another helping of porridge that tastes like warm paper, you are sent to assist with a less glamorous task. The latrine has overflowed again. You are told to help clear it. You gag before you even get close. The stench defies all logic, thick and clinging, the kind that crawls up your nose and lodges somewhere behind your eyes. You try breathing through your mouth, but the taste creeps in anyway. The officer in charge, with a face carved from stone, remarks that this will build character. You don't respond. You imagine building a character who deserts, steals a boat, and ends up on a beach in Spain. By the time you're done, your boots are coated in something you refuse to identify. You sit down on a ledge beside another soldier, a man everyone calls Scurry. No one remembers why. The nickname predates your arrival. Scurry is unwell. His skin is pale, almost translucent. He's shivering violently despite being wrapped in his coat. His eyes are sunken, staring into the middle distance. He mutters softly, words that make no sense, something about oranges and sand. Trench fever. That's what they say it is. A mysterious, exhausting illness spread by, of course, lice. You hand him a bit of water. He drinks, then immediately vomits it back into the muck. No one moves. No one is surprised, there is no treatment here. Not really. You don't get medicine unless you collapse. Or die. If you can still walk, you're considered fit. Some men have been known to fake trench fever just to escape the front lines for a few days, to rest in a hospital tent. To eat something warm. But the medics know the game. They have learned how to sniff out liars the way wolves sniff blood in the snow. Still, part of you wonders if it would be worth trying. You glance down at your foot again. The toe that was dark earlier is now a deep purple. You can't feel it anymore. It's just there. Numb and still. A few more days like this, and maybe you'll be considered unfit for duty. Maybe they'll send you back. Maybe there will be a real bed. Maybe a blanket. You catch yourself smiling at the thought. Smiling at the idea of gangrene as a way out. That's how the trench thinks. That's trench logic. Lunch arrives, unimpressive as always. Someone tries to boil tea using a tin helmet and a damaged stove that barely works. The result tastes like old coins and rust. Still, you drink. It's warm, and warmth is rare. During the lull in activity, a corporal orders you to join a digging detail. You are to help extend a sap trench, a narrow offshoot stretching forward into no man's land. These trenches are designed to inch soldiers closer to the enemy. Closer to danger. Closer to death. You dig silently, each movement slow and deliberate. The only sounds are the spade slicing through earth and your own heavy breathing. Each scoop feels heavier than the last. Your shoulders burn. Your back protests. You find yourself dreaming of dry places, of tile floors, of concrete hallways, of any surface that doesn't squish beneath your boots. As the sky begins to darken and the air grows colder, a chaplain appears. He moves quietly, respectfully. He offers simple prayers, wrapped bandages, and squares of chocolate that melt on your tongue like treasure. You accept the chocolate without hesitation. The prayer, you let drift past you. It hovers in the damp air, weightless and aimless. Scurry mumbles a thank you, then falls asleep with his head resting on a sandbag. Later, a soft whistle echoes down the trench. It's not sharp or urgent. It's the kind of whistle that soldiers use when they want to feel human again. Some men sit and play cards by candlelight. Others carve initials into their rifles or write letters they'll never send. You sit in your dugout, rubbing your feet, trying not to cry as bits of skin stick to your sock when you peel it off. You tuck the sock into your pocket like it's something precious. Like it's a secret. There's another joke, passed around with the air of ritual. What's worse than lice in your pants? Someone asks, you wait for the answer, lice in someone else's pants. It's stupid. But you laugh. You laugh harder than the joke deserves. Because the alternative is silence. And silence is far too loud. Moments later, a rifle cracks in the distance. A warning shot. A noise in the dark. You freeze, heart racing, and slowly reach for your own rifle. The safety clicks off with a sound that feels enormous. You hold your breath. Was it a rat? A night patrol? A man finally losing his grip? You don't find out. No one does. Night duty again. You're paired with a soldier named Joffrey. He's missing a front tooth and has a faded tattoo of a rose on the back of his hand. He tells you he was once a florist. You squint at him, skeptical. He just shrugs. Why would I lie about flowers? He asks. You can't think of a reason. He hums softly as you both take your posts, watching the dark expanse of no man's land. It stretches ahead like a frozen sea, motionless and endless. You think you see something move. Joffrey doesn't flinch. He just keeps humming. By the time your shift ends, your legs can barely carry you. You stagger back to your dugout and collapse into the same damp spot. You leave one foot sticking out of the blanket to dry. It doesn't. It stays cold. The lice return. You scratch until your knuckles crack and bleed. This is your routine now. Feet that rot. Skin that crawls. A mind that grows quieter every day, and tomorrow may be worse, because rumor has it, they're planning to send your company over the top. Soon. You're beginning to develop what the older soldiers refer to as trench instincts. It's not something they teach in drills. It comes from repetition, from survival, from subtle lessons paid for in blood and bruises. You learn to duck without thinking when someone suddenly shouts. You learn to flinch when the wind changes, bringing with it the distant scent of gas or the closer stench of something worse. You sleep with one eye half open, not from fear exactly, but from a need to always be ready. Yet for all the things you can adjust to, there is one that refuses to be tamed, one sensation that returns with no pattern or warning. Homesickness. It strikes without sound. It doesn't ask your permission. It finds you now, in the quiet part of the day. You are seated on a damp crate, shoulders hunched, fingers moving slowly as you pick lice from the waistband of your uniform. Your hands are cracked and red, your nails dark with dried mud and other things you try not to name. And just like that, you remember your kitchen. Not a specific moment, just the shape of it. The way light came through the window over the sink. The comforting tick of a wall clock. The smell of toast burning slightly, and the faint whistle of a kettle before someone reached to lift it. There was a dog once, scratching gently at the back door, tail wagging against the wooden frame. These memories feel distant now. Like they belong to a story you once heard rather than a life you lived. Someone else's comfort. Someone else's home. You reach into your breast pocket and pull out a piece of paper that has long since lost its crisp edges. A letter from home. Folded and unfolded too many times to count. The paper is soft, thin from touch and damp. You've read it perhaps 20 times, maybe more. But once again, your eyes scan the familiar lines. The handwriting is slightly slanted, precise, a little loopy. Your sister's hand. She writes about ordinary things. The cows are putting on weight. Your father finally got around to painting the fence behind the barn. Someone from down the road, an old farmer you barely remember, died in an accident involving a tractor. You pause at that part. You read it again. Not out of grief. But because, in a strange way, you envy him. He died in his own field, under a sky he knew. He didn't die in the mud, surrounded by strangers and rot. You almost admire him for it, just as the memory starts to pull you deeper, a sharp burst of static crackles to life from the trench loudspeaker. It makes you jump slightly, startled from your reverie. A voice follows. Flat. Mechanical. Emotionless. It announces some coded instruction for a different unit. Distant and unrelated to you. It sounds the way a man might read a weather report. Cold. Unbothered. Still, the spell is broken. You fold the letter carefully, press it once more against your chest, then slide it back into your pocket. Your throat tightens. You swallow. You don't know if it's because of the emotion or the mildew in the air. Maybe both, later, after the daily routines and the latest stretch of shovel work, you find a bit of canvas stretched taut over a corner of the trench wall. It offers a sliver of shelter from the misting rain. You crouch beneath it, trying to keep your shoulders dry, though the damp always finds a way in. Raindrops tap rhythmically above you, like fingers on a desk. The sound is almost musical. Almost annoying. You reach into your satchel and pull out a crumpled sheet of Army-issue stationery. The edges are curled, brown. You hold it steady and begin to write. Your pencil snaps halfway through the first sentence. You sharpen it with the edge of a ration tin, then try again. The words come slowly. Not because you have nothing to say, but because there's too much you cannot say. You choose carefully. You write about the adventure. You describe the weather as brisk. You mention comradeship, the morale of the unit, the warmth of tea, the humor of shared stories. What you do not mention is that your socks are falling apart. You do not mention the way Jenkins, the quiet man in the next dugout, hasn't spoken a word since his best friend vanished during last week's gas attack. You do not talk about the dampness that lives in your bones or the way your knuckles bleed every time you scratch. These are truths that do not belong on paper. You write lies instead. Soft lies. Harmless ones. The kind that sound like hope. When you finish, you hand your letter to the corporal. He takes it without comment, folds it carefully, and places it into the canvas satchel slung across his chest. You both know it will not travel directly to its destination. It will be opened first, scanned by eyes trained to find danger between the lines. Censorship is the uninvited companion of every letter that leaves the trench. Every scrap of paper, every postcard, every page is inspected. Some are clipped. Some are redacted. Others are rewritten entirely. You have seen the results. Soldiers receiving their own words returned to them with entire paragraphs blacked out. Whole pages erased with thick, oily ink. One man, trying to make sense of it all, wrote a short poem in his letter home. It mentioned a place by name. That was his mistake. After that, every letter he sent was brief and bland. 3 sentences. No poetry. Just, all's quiet. Love, Jim. Historians will argue about the purpose of all this. Was it about strategy? Preventing secrets from leaking to the enemy? Or was it about morale? About keeping families from knowing just how bad things had become? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps it was neither. Perhaps it was about control. About shaping the story of the war before it ever reached the hearts of home. In response, soldiers developed their own codes. Quiet phrases slipped between the lines. The ducks are restless meant that enemy scouts were moving again. Our boots are muddy meant the shelling was heavy. We saw the dentist could mean someone died. You begin to understand that even your own handwriting carries meanings beneath its surface. Words become layers. Sentences carry shadows. One day, a man named Foster receives a letter sealed with a tiny ribbon and scented faintly with lavender. His wife must have sprayed it. He unfolds it slowly, reverently, as if afraid it might crumble in his hands. He reads in silence, lips moving slightly, until something changes. You see it in his face. A flicker. A shift. Something she wrote struck him. Something small. A phrase, a tone. He does not speak much after that. He sits alone. Staring. You never ask what it was. You never find out. Your next round of sentry duty comes just before sundown, that hour when the light fades quickly and the world loses color. You are paired with a soldier known only as Pickle. He offers no explanation for the name, and no one asks. He has a piece of tobacco perpetually tucked in his cheek and hums tunelessly between breaths. It might be a lullaby. It might be something else entirely. Together, you stand on the fire step, rifles ready, eyes peering into the slow darkening of the field beyond. Pickle speaks softly, just once, she says she's waiting for me. He is talking about his girl. His voice carries the weight of hope, but also something quieter. You nod. You say nothing. You don't tell him about the rumors. The ones about women marrying before the war ends. About letters that start with my dearest and end with goodbye. You definitely don't mention the young soldier last week who received a letter and walked calmly into no man's land without his helmet, without his rifle, without a word. You don't say anything at all. But you stand with him. And you share the silence. Suddenly, the stillness breaks. A rustling sound in the wire. Pickle stiffens. You raise your rifle, finger resting lightly on the trigger. For a few tense seconds, your heart pounds against your ribs. Then you see it. A pigeon. Caught in the wire. Its wing is twisted, feathers bent at unnatural angles. You climb up carefully, untangle it with gentle hands, and lower it back into the trench. It coos softly in your palm. Pickle chuckles, a rare sound, funny thing about pigeons. Some of them are worth more than lieutenants. These birds carry messages across the battlefield, notes in tiny canisters tied to their legs. Stories circulate of pigeons saving entire companies by flying through gunfire to deliver a few scribbled lines. One of them, Cher Ami, flew with a shattered wing and a bullet through its chest. Still delivered the message. Still saved lives. They say it even got a medal. You pet the bird gently, then let it go. It flutters once, twice, then disappears into the mist, a ghost with a mission. Back in the trench, a soldier has received a letter and is reading it aloud. His voice is steady, his tone even. The letter speaks of apple pie. Of a new bicycle. Of the weather being unseasonably warm. You close your eyes. You listen. You imagine apples, real apples, not the ones printed on ration labels. You imagine sun on a wooden porch. The feel of a bedspread pulled up to your chin, there's a stir of movement in the next bay. Someone has received a package. Inside is a tin of ham and a pair of thick knitted socks. He offers the ham in exchange for chocolate. A dozen voices rise at once. The bidding war begins. For a moment, the trench sounds almost alive. You lean back and look up. The stars are out. They glitter like tiny lanterns hung from an invisible ceiling. You can't name them anymore. You once could. Back in school, you memorized constellations. Orion. The Big Dipper. Now you just stare. You wonder who else is staring at the same sky and thinking of you. You scratch your wrist absently. The lice are still here. They never leave. Pickle hands you a cigarette. You accept it without a word. The smoke curls upward, a thread that vanishes quickly. Down the trench, someone begins to sing. The voice is low, the melody slow and unfamiliar. It carries over the mud like something sacred. You don't know the song. You don't need to, you think of home. Of bread fresh from the oven. Of towels warmed by the fire. Of socks that smell like lavender and not like death. You think of things you may never hold again. Things that feel too distant now to even reach, at least, not for you. By this point, your grasp on time has faded into something vague and shapeless. You no longer think in terms of days. The trench does not acknowledge calendars or clocks. It has no interest in hours or weeks. Out here, there are only two states of existence. There is the time before the next bombardment. And there is the time after it. Everything in between is just space to be endured. The idea of Monday or Friday has lost its meaning. You do not count sunrises anymore. You measure time by how long it takes for your tea to go cold or for your boots to soak through again. But one thing you have begun to notice, and notice often, is the peculiar change in the air just before the artillery begins. It is not true silence. Not really. It is more like a stillness that pushes in from every direction. As if the trench itself is drawing in a breath and holding it. As if every man, every rat, every lice-ridden scrap of clothing understands what is coming and braces quietly for it. There is no need for an alarm. The stillness is enough. It creeps along the walls and settles over you like a heavy coat, and then you hear it. A low, rising whistle. You barely have time to react. Maybe 2 seconds. Maybe less. You count without meaning to. 1. 2, then it happens. The explosion is not simply a sound. It is a force that rips through everything around you. The earth heaves like something alive and angry. The sky flashes white, and for a moment, you see nothing but brightness. Then you are flat on your back, ears screaming, helmet tilted sideways, your mouth full of dirt. The dirt tastes metallic, like rusted coins. A piece of someone's gear lands near your leg. A torn strap. A broken buckle. You try not to wonder who it belonged to. You try harder not to ask if it's still connected to anyone. This is what they used to call shell shock. The term is old now, replaced by clinical phrases like post-traumatic stress disorder. But here, where boots stick in the mud and rats walk openly, no one uses such words. Here, it is simply called cracking up. Losing your grip. Falling apart. Being soft. The worst insult a man can receive is to be called weak. You sit up slowly. Every part of you trembles. Your ears ring so loud it feels like your brain is pulsing. Your heart thunders in your chest, not from exertion, but from sheer panic. The man beside you is curled in on himself, sobbing silently. His mouth is open in a voiceless cry. His fists are clenched tight, pressed against his thighs. Tears streak down the grime on his face. You do not know his name. He may not remember it himself. You reach out and rest a hand on his shoulder. He does not react. But he does not pull away either. That is enough. Historians still argue whether the generals, the men in command far behind the front, ever really understood what shell shock was. Some believed it was cowardice dressed as illness. Others thought it was a failure of the nerves, a physical malfunction. Today, we understand it as trauma. Deep, unshakable trauma. But back then, there was no patience for such nuance. If you could still lift a rifle, you were fit to return to the front. If not, you were marched out and placed before a board of medical officers who may or may not believe in wounds they could not see. There is a man in your unit named Thomas. He used to be a preacher, soft-spoken and steady. One night after an especially brutal barrage, he stood up, arms outstretched, and began to sing hymns. His voice was loud, broken, off-key. He swayed as he sang, smiling wide, laughing through the verses. The others didn't know what to do. Eventually, someone took away his rifle. He has not spoken since. Another man, whose name you never learned, once dropped to his knees and began digging a hole with his bare hands. He whispered the same phrase over and over. Something about his mother's garden. You considered stopping him. But you didn't. Because, honestly, the idea of a garden, of soil that grows things instead of burying them, sounded beautiful. When the trench quiets down, the conversations often drift back to those stories. Not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. Who cracked? Who was sent away? Who started seeing things that were not there? The tone is never mocking. It is wistful. Almost reverent. As if losing your mind is not the worst thing that can happen, but perhaps the only escape that does not involve a bullet. You try to sleep, but your mind does not allow it. The whistle plays in your head again and again, that dreadful high note that announces the end of peace. You flinch at the sound of distant thunder. You startle when a tin cup clatters to the floor. Your dreams offer no refuge. They are not stories. They are sounds. Just the noise of artillery. The pause. Then the roar. Over and over, there are no earplugs. No counseling sessions. No helpful advice. There is only time, and tobacco. You smoke now. You did not before. But now, like everyone else, you light up without thought. Even the medics hand out cigarettes. They say it calms the nerves. You are not convinced it does. But it gives your hands something to do. You strike a match and watch the flame. It flickers, warm and temporary. For a moment, it is the only light you trust. Later that night, you are ordered forward to repair barbed wire near the front edge of your sector. This is one of the most dangerous assignments. You climb out of the trench and crawl across open ground, your body pressed low to the earth. You drag a coil of wire through soil that smells of old blood and ashes. The moon is faint tonight, hidden behind a veil of cloud. That helps. But not much. You know the enemy has flares. If one goes up, you freeze. You stop breathing. You become a shadow, a stone, a lifeless thing. And you wait for the light to die. Tonight, by sheer fortune or someone else's misfortune, no flare goes up. You finish the job. The wire is secured. The crawl back is slower, every muscle in your body on edge. When you return, your section of the trench looks the same as when you left it. But something is different. Jenkins, the quiet man who always kept to himself, is still sitting at his post. He is unusually still. You call his name once. Twice. No answer. You reach out and nudge his shoulder gently. He does not react. His eyes are open, staring. But they see nothing. At first, you think he is sleeping with his eyes open. You have seen stranger things. Then you notice the blood. It has pooled silently beneath him. There is no wound that you can see. Just the slow seep of life leaving him. A sniper, perhaps. Or a shard of shrapnel. No one heard it. No one saw it. But now he is gone. He is the third today. You sit beside him for a while. There is no rush to move the body. There is nowhere to take it. No ceremony. No urgency. Just the soft squelch of boots in the mud. The coughing of a man 3 bays down who has not stopped wheezing in days. The sound of water dripping slowly onto metal. Eventually, someone arrives with a stretcher. Jenkins is lifted with care. His helmet is placed over his chest. Not as protection. But as a cover. A final gesture. No one speaks during this. No one needs to. Later, a young recruit named Ellis approaches you. He is pale. Too pale. He is clutching a mug, his hands shaking just enough to spill a bit of whatever is inside. He asks if it ever gets easier. You want to lie. You want to tell him yes. You want to offer hope. But your mouth stays shut. You shake your head. Ellis watches you for a moment. Then nods slowly, as if he already knew what you would say. Then he speaks again. Quiet. Steady. Just one sentence. I think I'd rather be dead than numb. You do not know how to respond. So you do not try. Instead, you hand him a cigarette. It is the only answer you have. A sudden burst of laughter erupts from farther down the trench. It is loud, unexpected. Not joyous, not really. Just desperate. Someone, apparently, found a box of biscuits dated from 2 months ago and dared another man to eat one. He did. he regrets it instantly. His reaction is theatrical, exaggerated. He groans, clutches his stomach, curses in 5 different ways. Everyone claps. Everyone cheers. You smile, not because it is funny, but because it interrupts the spiral of thoughts in your head. Sometimes that is all it takes. One stupid moment. One distraction. One ridiculous game to place a sliver of distance between you and the madness waiting just outside your mind. You return to your dugout. The air inside is thick and still. You reach for your journal and scratch a few words onto the stained page. Just pieces. Just fragments. Rain. Jenkins. Ellis. Still here. The pencil snaps in your hand. You stare at the broken lead. You do not reach for a sharpener. At around 3 in the morning, the shelling begins again. The sound rolls across the trench like thunder pulled from the belly of the earth. You do not need to wake. You are already awake. It begins the same way it always does. Not with a trumpet or a drum, not with a marching band or a commanding speech, but with a hiss. A sharp, sudden release of pressure from the darkness above. Then a flare bursts open like a cruel flower, casting a red glow over the trench walls. The light is harsh, unnatural, and it warps every shadow into something jagged and sharp. The flare floats, slow and indifferent, painting the faces around you in the same dreadful color. It hovers in the sky like an omen. You do not need to be told what it means. Still, the words come, stand by. Over the top in 5. They are shouted with force, but they land softly. Not because the voice lacks volume, but because your stomach has already clenched. The phrase slices through the fog of your thoughts and lodges in your chest. You reach for your helmet, fumbling with the strap. Your fingers feel thick and sluggish, as though your nerves are wrapped in cotton. Your rifle is already slung across your shoulder, the bayonet gleaming faintly in the red light. You have no memory of fixing it in place. Perhaps it was you. Perhaps someone else. Or perhaps fear did it for you. This is the moment. The one you have dreaded from the very first day. The thing whispered about in latrine queues and mess lines. The nightmare you could not fully imagine until now. This is the thing that turns soldiers into numbers. This is going over the top. You climb the fire step, boots slipping slightly against wet wood. Your breath fogs your glasses. You blink, and the fog returns. Someone slaps your shoulder. The impact is firm, sudden. It could be encouragement. It could be farewell. You do not turn to see who it was. There is no time. Just a blur of a face. Wide eyes. Jaw clenched. No words, a whistle shrieks. Not a bird. Not the wind. The kind of whistle that cannot be mistaken for anything else, and you move. You do not leap. There is no grace in what follows. You scramble. You climb. You stumble over the edge. Your foot catches on the top step. Mud grabs at your heel. You pull forward with a grunt and find yourself in open ground. No man's land stretches before you, wide and broken. Your boots sink into the sludge. Barbed wire catches your jacket and holds you there for a moment. You twist, wrenching yourself free. The fabric tears with a sound that you register but do not feel. Your coat flaps loose behind you. You are already running, all around, movement. Men scatter in broken lines. Some sprint, heads low, legs pumping through the muck. Others crawl. Some fall after 3 steps. Some don't take any. The noise is immediate. Deafening. A chaos that fills your entire body. It is not just sound. It is pressure. It is a scream in your bones. The air is alive. It tears and snaps with bullets that pass so close you can feel the heat of them. They cut past your ears like angry insects, fast and sharp. Your rifle remains in your hands, but you do not raise it. You do not aim. You just run. Forward. Toward an invisible line. Toward a shape in the fog. Toward something someone marked on a map long before you were assigned to this place. You find a shell crater, still warm from recent impact. You throw yourself into it. The earth there is scorched. Blackened. It smells of gunpowder and something worse. You curl into the hole, pressing your body against the ground. Your heartbeat feels like it is trying to escape your chest. Next to you, a man is groaning. It is not a scream. It is a low, steady moan, like a dog in pain. You do not turn to look. You cannot. You know that if you do, you may never move again. Historians still debate the logic behind these charges. The frontal assaults. The slow, methodical attempts to take a few yards of ground at the cost of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of lives. Some claim they were necessary. A slow bleed to wear down the enemy. Others call them something else entirely. A waste. An execution. A mistake written in blood and repeated in ink. What they all agree on is that most of these attacks gained little. And what they gained was rarely worth what was lost, but none of that matters now. In this moment, you are not thinking about strategy. You are not thinking about tactics or maps or generals. You are thinking about your shoelace. It has come undone. And your boot feels loose. This is what your mind latches onto. A tiny, absurd detail. Something small to hold in your thoughts so that the larger, louder horrors cannot take root. Someone shouts, "Forward." You rise again, you climb from the crater. Your legs shake. The ridge ahead is slick with wet earth, and you stumble as you reach the top. You drop into another crater, this one deeper. Your knees vanish into the mud. For a moment, you are stuck. Then movement. A shape. A glimpse of gray. A helmet. A flash of eyes. You raise your rifle. But your hands betray you. They tremble. Your finger rests on the trigger, but does not pull. You stare. The figure stares back, then it is gone. You continue. Around you, the world is a storm. Smoke curls and drifts. Cries rise and vanish. You are deaf to all of it. Not from distance, but from shock. Your own pulse drowns out everything else. You feel a hand on your arm. You turn. Corporal Wills. His face is smeared with dirt, his lips split, his eyes wide with adrenaline. He is speaking, but the words do not reach you. You nod anyway. It feels like the right thing to do. Then the whistle sounds again. This time it signals retreat. You pivot. Your feet sink deeper now, the return somehow more difficult than the charge. You fall twice. The second time, your helmet tumbles off and rolls into a ditch. You crawl the last stretch, elbows digging into mud, mouth full of grit. Each inch feels longer than the last. When you finally reach the trench, you do not step down. You collapse. You fall face first onto a discarded coat that smells of gas, sweat, and death. You do not lift your head. You do not speak, you lie there, listening. One man is crying softly, breath catching in his throat. Another is laughing, high-pitched and wild. The kind of laughter that sounds like it might break into pieces. You recognize it. You have heard it before. Your name is called, you lift your hand. Slowly, you are still here, you push yourself up to a seated position. Your knees shake uncontrollably. A medic passes by, carrying a stretcher. On it lies a man with a bandaged face. You turn away. You do not want to see. You have trained yourself not to look too long. In the next section of trench, Ellis is hunched over, vomiting onto the floor. Between heaves, he gasps that he saw someone without a face. You do not doubt him. Not for a second. You are handed a cup of tea. It is hot. Slightly sweet. You cradle it between both hands as though it might vanish if you let go. The metal mug is already smudged with dirt and fingerprints. You drink slowly. Grateful for the warmth. You do not care about the taste. No one speaks of what just happened. There is no discussion. No recognition. No comfort. Just silence. Then, without ceremony, the orders resume. Someone says, "Back to work," in the same tone one might use after a lunch break. Later, you wash your face using rainwater collected in a dented helmet. The water is cloudy, tinged with brown. Still, you scoop it up and splash your cheeks. The cold bites your skin. You do not flinch. Your hands tremble as you try to lace your boots. The laces slip between your fingers. You cannot make the knot. Pickle notices. He kneels, says nothing, and ties them for you. Then he pats your knee. He walks away. You lie down in your dugout, still wearing your boots. You do not undress. You do not close your eyes. You simply stop. Your mind does not wander. It does not imagine. It does not resist. You feel nothing. Not blackness. Not peace. Just the absence of thought. A vacancy. As if your brain turned off the lights to conserve power. When morning arrives, it brings no change. You are on the fire step again. Watching the horizon. The mist hangs low. There is a shape ahead. A dark silhouette. You think, for a moment, that it might be a tree stump. Then you realize the truth. It is not a stump. It is a man. Or was. You turn your gaze elsewhere. Breakfast is porridge. Still thin. Still tasteless. Someone begins writing a letter. You glance at the first line. It reads, "It's been quiet lately." You almost laugh. You do laugh. Quiet is a matter of perspective. You clean your rifle. It jammed yesterday. Just once. That one misfire could have been the end. You whisper a thank you. Not to anyone in particular. Just to the air. Just to survive one more moment, to fill the time, you begin a quiet game. You name every man in your unit from memory. You try to picture their faces. Their voices. Their habits. You count them silently, then you stop, because you realize the number has changed. Again. And you do not want to know by how much. Not today. Not yet. The warning does not come with sound. It comes with scent. A sharp, biting stench that hits the back of your throat like a slap. Before your ears even register the shouting, your nose flares and recoils. It is a chemical scent, raw and sour, a mixture that seems to burn on contact. It smells like garlic left too long in the sun, mixed with spoiled meat and the acidic bite of chlorine. It is wrong in every way. It is foreign. And your body reacts before your mind has time to catch up. Then the call arrives, ricocheting down the trench with rising urgency. Gas. Gas. Gas, voices shouted again and again, overlapping in panic and desperation. You move before you think. Your hands reach for the canvas pouch tied at your chest. The straps feel unfamiliar, as if someone replaced them overnight with copies that do not quite fit. The buckles catch on each other, twisting, resisting. Your fingers are clumsy and slow, thick with dread. You fight them, willing them to obey. Every second feels stretched and thin. You wrestle the mask from its pouch, unfold the rubber, and pull it over your face, tugging the straps tight until they bite into your scalp. Just in time, over the top of the trench wall, a strange mist begins to descend. It is not fog. It is not smoke. It is heavier, sluggish, colored with sickly swirls of green and yellow. It moves with eerie grace, curling downward like a living thing, flowing into the spaces where men crouch and breathe. It spills over the parapet, searching for lungs to fill. Your breath becomes shallow. The mask seals tight, but the air inside is no comfort. It tastes of rubber, damp cloth, and the rising sourness of your own fear. Somehow, the mask makes the smell worse. The stench concentrates inside it, coating your tongue. You swallow instinctively, then regret it. This is gas. You do not know which kind. It could be mustard. It could be phosgene. Both are invisible threats with different clocks. One strangles you in seconds. The other waits, silent and patient, then crushes your lungs hours later. You learn not to ask. The name does not matter. What matters is that it is here. Your eyes begin to sting. Not from crying, but from the reaction. The gas seeps into any opening it can find. Around the rims of your goggles. Into the creases of your shirt. Beneath your collar. It does not need an invitation. It simply arrives. Your skin starts to prickle. A tingling sensation crawls along your arms, beneath your sleeves, into your wrists. The smart men climb onto the fire step, trying to stay above the invisible fog. The brave ones stay to help others. You do not yet know which one you are. To your left, a sound breaks the rhythm. Not a shout. Not a cough. Something worse. Someone didn't get their mask on in time. The sound is a horrible mix of retching and screaming, as if his lungs have decided they've had enough. You do not turn to look. But the noise follows you, sticks to you, embeds itself in your memory. It is the sound of someone drowning without water. Historians argue about the true purpose of gas in this war. Some say it was psychological. Designed to frighten, to demoralize. Others count the dead and wounded and point to numbers. Burned lungs. Melted eyes. Blackened skin. No one denies that gas brought horror in a way bullets never could. You remember the training session. It feels like years ago, though it was only a few weeks. The sergeant had stood in front of you, tapping his stick against the wall for emphasis. He told you, if you smell new mown hay, mask up. If you smell garlic, you're already too late. You thought he was exaggerating. Maybe even joking. He wasn't. The gas does not only assault the lungs. It attacks the skin. It irritates the eyes until they flood with tears. Some men lose their sight for hours. Some never get it back. There is no real treatment. No antidote. Just milk poured into the eyes, and maybe a cloth soaked in water to ease the burn. The rest is left to chance. This time, you were lucky. If that word means anything here, eventually, the whistle comes. One long blast. The all clear. You remove the mask slowly, cautiously, your hands shaking as they lift it away. You hold it to your side but keep it close. You inhale the air in short bursts, testing it like a wary animal. The stench still lingers. Your nostrils burn. But you can breathe. You made it through. You are told to report to the medical station. Just in case. You walk with stiff legs, feeling every muscle in your back twitch with tension. The medic looks at your face, checks your throat with a gloved hand. He mutters that you're fine. His fingers tremble slightly as he signs your name into a small notebook. You sit for a while beside another soldier. His skin is red and patchy, blistered around the neck. He stares ahead, rocking back and forth slightly, not speaking. You look at him and wonder if he still feels like a person. Or if the gas took more than just his breath, back at your section, the mood is muted. The gas didn't take many lives this time. But that's not the point. It left something else behind. Fear. Real fear. The kind that does not scream. The kind that waits, just under the skin. You feel it collecting, layering, like sandbags stacked against a rising tide. Every experience adds to the pile, evening falls. A soldier lights a cigarette with hands that will not stay still. You lie in your dugout, trying to sleep, but the smell remains in your nose. You taste it, even with your mouth closed. It follows you into your dreams, which shimmer strangely and sting behind your eyelids. In the morning, you wake and feel something beneath your arms. Redness. Heat. You check the skin. Small rashes, already forming. You say nothing. It is probably nothing. It always is. Until it isn't, Pickle finds you lacing your boots. He speaks quietly, they've got something new now. German weapon. Gas that slips right through the mask. You try to laugh. It comes out thin. He doesn't laugh at all. He nods instead and says, "Soon we'll need masks for our masks." You believe him. More than you want to. Later that day, a delivery arrives. New masks. Supposedly improved. They are larger, with heavier straps and thick, bulging eyepieces. The filters look like something pulled from a machine. When worn, they make everyone look like animals. Beasts in a line. Snouts and goggles. War strips you down, piece by piece, until you forget what your own face looks like. A drill is held to test the new equipment. You are told to run in place, to breathe hard through the filter. You feel the mask tighten, heat rising inside. Sweat gathers along your neck. You fight the urge to rip it off. Not everyone succeeds. One soldier panics. He tears the mask away and falls to the ground, gasping. They do not punish him. They let him rest for 2 days. Not because he failed. Because they understand, word spreads that gas shells are now mixed in with the regular artillery. No warning. No colored flares. Just the boom. Then the cloud. It has become a lottery. Every shell is a gamble. You start sleeping with your mask tied loosely around your face. The rubber pressing against your cheek like a second skin. It rests on your chest like a grotesque teddy bear. You do not sleep deeply anymore. You wake easily. You always check your straps, and slowly, without realizing it, you begin to adapt. You start recognizing the different smells. You can tell them apart. Phosgene has the scent of cut grass, pleasant but deadly. Chlorine bites at your teeth. Mustard gas is heavy, sticking to your clothes, to your skin. You begin noticing other things. Things no one should. How gas affects the human body. How it causes swelling. How it changes the way the dead look. How their eyes remain open, glassy and fixed, long after the rest of them is still. This is not something you can explain in a letter. How would you write that? How do you tell someone at home that, for a time, men used rags soaked in urine as makeshift masks because someone said it might help? You do not, you write instead. Feeling fit. Weather turning cold. Send socks, you scratch at your rash. You blink against the sting in your eyes. You try not to think about what will come with the next shell. You look across no man's land. For a moment, it appears calm. The mud gleams slightly in the early light. If you squint, you could almost believe it is a marshy field. Perhaps even a place where something might grow, but you know better, you know what lies beneath that surface. You know what has been buried there. You know that some part of you is buried there too. Even if your body returns home, you are no longer whole, and the next time you hear the hiss, you will still run for your mask. But you will already know that the mask is only part of the fight. The rest is staying human. For as long as you can. You used to believe that soldiers were meant to be solemn. Stoic. The strong, silent types who grit their teeth and press forward, never complaining, never cracking. Heroes, in the old-fashioned sense. Stone-faced and sturdy. But a few weeks in the trenches reshapes that belief completely. You learn quickly that what keeps men alive, sometimes more than rations or rifles, is laughter. And not the polite kind. Not smiles over supper or chuckles around a hearth. The laughter here is something else entirely. It's raw. Bitter. Desperate. And trench humor. It is as dark and wet as the mud that stains your socks. It starts with names. Real ones fade fast. They only return when someone is in trouble or when someone is gone. Instead, you adopt nicknames. Each one a shield, a joke, a lifeline. There's Pickle, of course. Everyone knows him. Then there's Biscuit, who hoards them like gold bars and never shares. Sarge isn't actually a sergeant. No one knows why the name stuck, but it did. Choirboy can't carry a tune to save his life. Jenkins used to be called Sunshine, a bitter joke since he never smiled. After he died, no one said that name again. One man insists his full title is Sir Major Lieutenant Field Marshal Dan. He says it with a straight face, salutes himself in the mirror of a canteen, and corrects anyone who forgets the Sir. Nobody challenges him. Partly because it's funny. Mostly because it helps. Even the latrine gets a name. They call it the cigar lounge. Someone always delivers the same line with mock grandeur, bowing and gesturing to the pit like a butler. "Welcome, gentlemen," he says. Smoking jackets optional. Everyone groans. Everyone chuckles. You laugh more now. Not because things are funny. Almost nothing is funny here. But because it is the only option left. Laughter is the one thing that doesn't rust. It's the last weapon you have that the war cannot steal. Today, a soldier sketches a face on a biscuit with charcoal, gives it button eyes, and sets it on the trench ledge. "Meet Corporal Crunch," he says. Then he breaks off the biscuit's head and tosses it to a passing rat. The joke lands. The name sticks. Corporal Crunch becomes a legend. Mentioned in whispered tales, blamed for every missing ration. He is mourned with mock ceremony when someone steps on his crumbs. The rats, by the way, are thriving. Bold, relentless, well-fed. This morning, you woke to one perched on your chest, chewing casually on your soap like it was a delicacy. You shouted. It stared. Then it sauntered off like it owned the place. One soldier swears he saw a rat dragging an entire sock into a dugout. Another claims he caught two playing cards. A third, with a completely straight face, announces that the rats are evolving. Next week, he says, they'll be carrying bayonets. Even lice get a name. No one calls them lice. Too serious. Too real. Instead, they are called chats. It's easier to say, "I've got a chat infestation," than to admit that your body is a battlefield of itching. "I'm under chat attack," someone says at breakfast. Everyone nods. Everyone scratches. There's a favorite game too. It's called Guess That Smell. It's always played half seriously, with deep sniffs and dramatic pondering. Someone announces, rotten onions, wet socks, and fear. Another suggests, old boots. Boiled beef, and melancholy. No one ever wins. The smells in the trench defy description. Historians will debate how morale survived in such places. Some credit the strength of bonds between soldiers. Others say denial kept men upright. But almost all agree that humor, dark and strange, played a vital role. A single joke could be the thread that kept someone from unraveling completely. The difference between keeping watch and walking into no man's land without a rifle might be one shared laugh. Sometimes the jokes go too far. One night, a new recruit, young, pale, all knees and elbows, wakes up screaming from a dream. Before anyone checks if he's alright, someone tosses a tin bucket over his head and shouts, "Gas attack." The trench erupts in laughter. Even the boy laughs eventually, cheeks red, voice shaky. But later, you notice his hands. They don't stop trembling. Not all night, still, laughter is better than sobbing. Most of the time, bets have become a form of entertainment. Absurd wagers with no real value. Like guessing when the next rat will fall into someone's mess tin. Or timing how long it takes to boil water with a single candle and pure willpower. You once bet that choirboy could eat an entire tin of bully beef in under 3 minutes without gagging. He tried. He failed. Spectacularly. It took 2 days to get the smell out of the dugout. When letters arrive, the performance begins. Each one is read aloud in the most exaggerated accent possible. Especially the dull ones. Especially the ones from aunts and distant cousins. "Dear Alfie," someone reads in a voice fit for the stage, "the cat has been most well behaved, though Aunt Mildred remains terribly disagreeable." Everyone cheers. Even Alfie, who blushes and bows, "Your own letters home have changed. You exaggerate everything now. You say the rats are the size of ponies and have formed political parties. You claim to be growing a mustache so grand that birds have attempted to nest in it. You draw little cartoons of trench life, absurd caricatures of officers and rats shaking hands. The truth is not what matters. The absurdity is what keeps the page from becoming unbearable. One soldier has a gift for impressions. He mimics the lieutenant perfectly, down to the awkward throat clear and the odd pause before every third word. The men beg him to perform. "Give us the one where he's got a bellyache during a speech." He obliges. The trench howls with laughter. Even the lieutenant hears about it and pretends to be angry. But later, you catch him grinning behind a sandbag, shoulders shaking silently. There is even a trench newspaper now. It's handwritten on old map scraps and passed hand to hand. No real ink, just pencil and creativity. The headlines are always the same flavor of nonsense: mud forecast, infinite, bully beef declared delicacy by man who has lost taste, ghost of Jenkins spotted in latrine again. You contribute once, scribbling a limerick onto a corner of ration wrapping. "There once was a trench full of rats, who dined on our crumbs and our hats. They voted last week to elect Corporal Reek, and demanded we furnish them spats." It earns you a round of applause and, inexplicably, a dead rat placed at your feet as tribute. You pretend to knight it. Of course, there is gallows humor. The kind that makes you laugh while something inside you curls up. Someone mentions trench funerals. They say ashes to ashes, but here, it's more like mud to deeper mud. You laugh. Then you feel it twist in your chest. But the joke stands. No one tells them to stop. The jokes are pressure valves. The laughter is a release. If you cannot laugh at death, it becomes personal. And out here, you cannot afford to take death personally. During one particularly heavy shelling, you leap into a dugout, landing squarely in Pickle's lap. He blinks, looks down, and says, "Well, if this is my end, at least I'll die confused." You both start laughing. Not because it's funny. Because you're alive. That night, someone sneaks into the officers' quarters and draws mustaches on their photographs. You add round spectacles and a monocle to one. It's childish. Immature. Perfect. You find your own brand of humor too. You begin narrating the rats' lives like a nature documentary. "Sir Reginald of Cheeseclaw," you whisper one night, has declared open war on the crumb kingdom of biscuits higher. Pickle nods solemnly. It was inevitable, he replies. In the darkness, you both smile, but the humor is delicate. It is a thin shell over something fragile. One morning, someone notices Choirboy's rifle leaning against the trench wall. Alone. Cold. There is no sign of him. No note. No tracks. Nothing. Maybe he went over the top. Maybe he wandered off. Maybe he found a hole and crawled into it. You do not know. No one does. That day, the jokes fall silent, but the next morning, someone nails a sign over the latrine entrance. It reads, Choirboy's office, appointments available upon humming. And the laughter returns. Soft. Hesitant. Then stronger, because the war wants your laughter. It wants your smile. It wants the spark behind your eyes that remembers life before this. Every time you joke, every time you truly laugh, you are resisting, and somehow, in that tiny rebellion, you win. For one brief moment, you win. You are learning to move like a shadow, silent and slow, careful in every movement. Out here, noise is a risk. Every step is a fragile negotiation with the mud, which sucks at your boots like it wants to keep you. Every breath is measured. Every cough is buried deep in the crook of your elbow. Even your heartbeat feels too loud sometimes. The sun, when it bothers to rise, barely makes an effort. It stays hidden behind a curtain of mist, hesitant and cold, painting everything in soft gray. And you? You are crouched low beneath a tattered camo net, knees aching, clutching a folded message and peering through a periscope warped by frost and mud, scanning the barren sweep of no man's land. Today, you are not holding your rifle like a weapon. Today, you are holding something just as important. A message. You are not a fighter this morning. You are a runner. In theory, the trench system has ways to communicate. In practice, most of them fail. Yelling works, but only if someone is close. Field telephones exist, but they fail often. The wires are cut by shrapnel, by weather, or by rats with sharp teeth and sharper attitudes. So, when higher-ups need to send orders down the line, they fall back on something ancient and reliable. People. Soldiers who run from trench to trench, message in hand, heart pounding. Targets on 2 feet, you adjust your helmet, tugging it into place. The corporal hands you a damp, dirt-smudged envelope sealed tightly with tape and sweat. He nods once, eyes tired, to 2nd platoon, forward trench, he mutters, you nod in return. You know the way. 3 turns through the support line, past a collapsed dugout and a food cache that smells like old boots, then through a narrow communications trench called Dead Man's Elbow. The name has never sat well with you. It's too specific, you say nothing. Words are too heavy. You just breathe in, hold the message tight, and start moving. You slip into the maze of trench corridors, weaving through tight corners and broken planks, boots landing softly on duckboards slick with rain and rot. You duck low under splintered beams, squeeze past bent-over soldiers, and drift past fragments of lives still in motion. A medic, bare-chested, shaves with a shard of mirror and cold water. A cook stirs something gray and gelatinous in a dented pot, swearing softly to himself. A boy, no older than 16, digs at his rifle stock with a spoon, trying to carve his name into wood that no longer remembers the shape of dry hands. You pass them like a ghost. They barely register you. You are movement, not a person. 1 breath in. 1 breath out. Your eyes scan ahead. Your feet never stop. You reach the forward trench. You find the man in charge. You hand him the message. He takes it, opens it, reads it quickly, he says nothing. That's expected, you turn to go, thinking you are finished. Then you hear it. A strange flutter, clumsy and fast. A beat of wings. A pigeon lands nearby, wobbling slightly on its feet, feathers askew. It stands awkwardly on the trench edge, head tilting from side to side like it owns the place. You recognize him instantly, Harold. No one really remembers how the bird got his name, but everyone uses it. You know his routine. You offer a capful of water. He ignores it and pecks your boot instead. A feather drifting loose from his wing. That's Harold for you. Rude, loyal, completely indispensable, Harold is not just a bird. He is backup. If the runners fall, the pigeons fly. Each one carries a tiny brass cylinder strapped to its leg, just large enough to hold a message that could change everything. Orders. Coordinates. Please for artillery support. Please to stop artillery support. If all else fails, the pigeons are the last voice a trench has. Historians still argue about the real value of birds in trench warfare. Some call them a quaint desperation, a holdover from older wars. But the truth is simple. Pigeons like Harold got through more often than not. One, famously, named Sher Ami, saved an entire battalion. Flew 25 miles through smoke and fire, one leg hanging by a thread, one eye gone, blood on her feathers. Still delivered the note. Still saved lives. She got a medal for it. A statue, too. Harold flaps once, drops another feather, and stares up at you. His small black eyes look bored. Maybe annoyed. Maybe proud. You are not sure. But you are impressed. Everyone is. You begin your return, taking your time. No need to rush now. You pass the same medic, now bandaging his own knuckles. You pass Pickle, seated on a crate, humming God Save the King to the tune of O Susanna, a habit he claims is part of his plan to confuse the enemy. You pass a soldier drawing in the mud with a stick. Not a map. Not a plan. Just drawing shapes. Something to do, then it happens, a crack in the air. Sharp and clean. A bullet passes so close to your ear you feel it rather than hear it. You duck instinctively. So does everyone else, snipers. You fall flat to the ground, pressing yourself into the trench floor. Your breathing stops. Your heart races. You wait. Somewhere across the blasted field, a German marksman is watching. Silent. Patient. Lethal. The shot missed, but not by much. Everything becomes louder. The drip of water into a puddle sounds like a drumbeat. The creak of a rifle sling echoes like thunder. You hear a cough from 2 trenches over and imagine the sniper turning toward it. Your imagination runs wild. Or maybe it's real. Snipers are the ghosts of trench warfare. They hide in shell craters, under camouflage, dressed like sacks of sand or twisted tree roots. They can wait all day for one breath, one blink, one mistake. And when they fire, there's rarely a second chance. You stay low. Motionless. Eventually, a decision is made. The lieutenant sends up a spotter. Drew. A quiet man with eyes that seem to see everything. He climbs to the edge with a scope, scanning slowly. He does not speak. He breathes carefully. Then he murmurs, tree line. Left. 70 yards. Then he disappears back into the dugout, as if he were never there. You take a pencil stub, write a short note, and tie it carefully to Harold's leg. He coos disapprovingly but accepts the burden. You lift him to the air. He hesitates. Then flaps hard and takes off, a blur of gray feathers against the overcast sky. You watch him go, you hope he makes it. Someone nearby starts a betting pool. How far before Harold gets clipped? Crumbs, buttons, bits of string are tossed into a rusted tin lid. You bet on 50 yards. He vanishes into the mist at 120. No feathers fall. No shots come. Harold, once again, lives up to his legend. Later, as the sky begins to fade behind another curtain of evening fog, your name is called for watch duty. Again. You gather your gear and head to the fire step, where a man named Toby is already waiting. He claims to have once dated a duchess. You suspect the duchess was a milkmaid named Bess, but you say nothing. You let him believe. Toby carries a flare gun and a cloth pouch filled with pigeon food, in case the message needs wings. He says with a smirk, rattling the feed gently. You both understand what he means. The night is quiet. Too quiet. That phrase has become a cliché, but you know now that clichés are born from truth. You peer through the periscope, scanning the horizon. Nothing moves. But you know something is always there. Somewhere. Watching back, to stay awake, you talk softly. Toby tells you the story of the time he used a pigeon to propose. The bird flew the wrong way and delivered the note to a pub. The bartender wrote back. She said yes. I drank to your happiness. You laugh. Too hard. Too long. It feels good. It feels necessary. After your shift ends, you crawl back to your dugout. You remove your boots and sit with your notebook balanced on one knee. You write slowly. Harold lives. Sniper missed. I still breathe. Not poetry. But it will do. For now, it is enough. You awake to singing, not the usual morning sounds of boots stomping through mud or shouted orders rattling through the cold air. Not the rhythmic hacking of a cough or the metallic clatter of gear. And certainly not the high whine of shells. This is something else. Something quieter. Softer. You blink against the dim light, barely able to place it at first. It floats through the frost-thick air like fog, faint and far away, curling over the trenches in thin, musical threads, not birdsong. Not a soldier humming. Actual singing. Gentle voices, rising in slow unison, carried across the land as if wrapped in mist. You sit up cautiously, brushing sleep from your eyes with hands still stiff from the cold. You glance toward the sound, unsure whether you are dreaming, or still halfway inside one. But then you hear the shift of movement. Heads begin to rise from dugouts like curious prairie dogs. Eyes blink open. Helmets tilt upward. Rifles lower slowly, their owners suddenly unsure of what they're doing. Even the rats stop scurrying. They pause in mid-nibble, twitching their noses, as if sensing something unusual. Something sacred. It is Christmas morning. The fact surprises you. You had forgotten what day it was. Time is a blurry thing in the trenches, worn down by days of sameness and nights of fear. But now, without ceremony, the battlefield seems to recognize it. The guns are silent. The ground holds its breath. Somehow, against every grim instinct of this place, the war has gone still. A whisper moves down the line. Someone says, "They're singing still knacked." You don't understand German, not more than a phrase or two, but the tune is unmistakable. Silent night. The melody is familiar in your bones. It is being sung from the enemy trench. At first, you just listen. You don't move. You barely breathe. But then, impossibly, you hear a voice from your own side begin to hum. A second joins in, tentative but steady. The sound grows. You find your lips moving along, not even meaning to, the words forming in the quiet space between heartbeats, and then it happens. A soldier, not far from you, stands. He rises to his feet. He carries no rifle. No pistol. His hands are raised, empty and open, palms exposed to the sky. He climbs out of the trench slowly, his boots crunching in the frozen mud, his breath steaming like smoke from a candle, you think he has lost his mind. No one survives standing in open air. He must be mad. Or maybe he simply no longer cares. But what is more astonishing than his act is what follows it. No one shoots, not a single shot. No bark of command. No alarm. No chaos. Just silence and song. Historians would later argue over the details. They debate how it began, who first stepped forward, which trenches started it. But what remains undisputed is that the Christmas truce of 1914 happened. Spontaneous. Unofficial. Real. A sliver of humanity carved into the darkest of places. Letters written by trembling hands confirmed it. So did diary entries, half frozen in pencil. And so did the old men who survived it. When they told the story later, their voices carried a wonder like children recalling a fairy tale. You climb out of the trench next. Slowly, knees unsteady. The slope is slick with frost, and your boots nearly lose purchase, but you make it over. The air hits you like a slap, crisp and metallic, the smell of ice and churned earth filling your nose. The sky is dull and endless, a dome of gray light. Across the field, through a haze of smoke and memory, you see them, Germans. Unarmed. Smiling. Waving with gloved hands and bare fingers alike. Someone throws a tin of biscuits. It arcs in the air, wobbles, and lands near a pair of German soldiers. One catches it, laughs, and tosses something back, a bar of chocolate, slightly dented but whole. The trade is met with cheers and applause. Then, as if the day had not already defied every law of war, a football appears. No one knows exactly where it came from. Some swear it was patched together with bootlaces and wrapped in twine. Others say it looked brand new, like it had been waiting just for this moment. It hardly matters. What matters is that soon, soldiers from both sides are chasing it, slipping and sliding through the slush, dodging holes and ducking craters. Their voices ring out in a wild, joyful chaos that sounds nothing like war. You don't play. You simply watch, rooted in place, overwhelmed. Your fingers twitch. Your breath fogs. You watch boots collide with the ball, arms flail, laughter echo. Not machine guns. Not screaming. Just the thud of muddy boots, the clap of cold hands, the sound of men remembering they are still human. Someone starts singing Auld Lang Syne. The notes are rough and unsure but carry across the frost. Another voice tries O Tannenbaum. There are a dozen accents, a dozen languages, but the same tone. Hopeful. Fragile. True, a boy no older than you offers a cigarette. You exchange it for one of your own. His name is Carl. He points at your rifle. Then at his, and makes a face of disgust. Stupid, he says, his English perfect. You nod. You agree without needing words. He gives you a small tin of liver pâté. You give him a corner of crumbling fruitcake from the bottom of your pack. It is, somehow, the finest meal you've had in months. You learn Carl used to be a baker. He tells you about the cakes he once made, his hands miming the rolling of dough. You tell him you worked in a print shop, setting type. He smiles at that. You both laugh, not too loudly. You both know this moment is temporary. Delicate. A breath held in history. But for this sliver of borrowed time, you let yourselves believe it might last. Someone tries to take a photograph of the gathering. A British officer steps in quickly and stops it. He frowns, says quietly, "Command won't like it." His voice is apologetic. "Orders are orders," he adds. No fraternizing. No gifts. No smiles, but today, command is absent. Today, there are no generals. Only men. The truce stretches through the afternoon. You see soldiers swap buttons from their coats, hand over family photos, even trade boots that fit better. You watch someone sketch a caricature of a German soldier in charcoal, then hand it over to its laughing subject. You laugh, too. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't feel like betrayal. Just before the sun begins to dip, painting the sky in a dull wash of amber, the inevitable order comes: back to your posts. No shouting. No barking of commands. Just quiet words, passed down the line with leaden hearts. The spell begins to break. You turn to Carl. His hands are cold and rough as yours. He clasps yours in both of his and says something in German. You don't understand, but you feel the meaning. It sounds like a blessing. Like a goodbye. You nod. The back of your throat aches, then you return to the trench. Someone tries to play a song on a harmonica. The melody collapses in the middle. No one finishes it. Bayonets are affixed again. Ammunition is checked. The rifles are loaded once more. The old routine slides back into place like a familiar coat. Nothing has changed. But you feel it. Deep down. Everything has. You lie awake in your dugout long after lights are out. A single candle flickers nearby, its wax pooling on the lid of a tin. You stare at the roof above you, dirt hanging from timbers, and replay the day again and again. It feels like something out of a story. Did it happen? Was Carl real? Did you really see men smiling across no man's land? Did someone really score a goal between sandbags? In the morning, the first shell falls. It whistles high and lands far too close. Then another. And another. The war returns with its usual fury, as if it never left. A new sergeant arrives that day. He is younger than you expected. He looks around at the men with narrowed eyes and announces that the truce was undisciplined. A disgrace. He says that anyone who tries it again will be shot. No questions. No exceptions. You nod. Everyone nods. But the nods are slow, mechanical. No one looks up. No one meets anyone else's gaze. A week later, while cleaning your pack, you find something you had forgotten. A button. Smooth, metal, worn at the edges. German. Probably Carl's. You hold it between your fingers for a long time. You do not display it. You do not speak of it. You hide it deep in your boot, next to your extra socks and a broken pencil. Not out of rebellion. Not out of pride. Simply out of gratitude, proof that, for one fleeting, impossible day, even in this frozen hell, something good broke through. Something that did not come from a command or a weapon. You never see Carl again, but now and then, when the fog settles thick and quiet, or someone lights a candle in the cold, or a far-off whistle sounds like a song instead of a warning, you remember, and that memory lives. It lives louder than any gunfire, stronger than any trench wall, because for one sacred, unbelievable day, the war stopped. The parcel arrives in the late afternoon, when the light is low and the trench shadows grow long. It is wrapped in rough burlap, tied with thin string that has frayed at the edges, and carries with it a scent that seems almost mythical. It smells faintly of home. Not any single place or moment, but the vague, lingering memory of home as it exists in your imagination. There is the hint of mothballs, like the kind your mother kept in a drawer filled with sweaters. There is a trace of candle wax, stiff and dusty, and something else. Something warm and intangible. Hope. You look at it the way a starving man might look at a roast through a window. Like it is too good to be true. Because in some small, miraculous way, it is. This package has come from the other side of the world. It has survived careless handlers, endless train rides, muddy roads, postal confusion, rain, snow, and the sheer chaos of war. It has crossed oceans and front lines and bureaucratic mazes. And yet, against all odds, it has made its way to you. You sit staring at it for a long time before touching it, as if it might vanish. When you finally open it, your hands trembling slightly, you find a single can of peaches inside. Just one. Sealed in tin, stamped with the name of a factory you vaguely remember seeing on a billboard as a boy. You sit back and stare at it. The absurdity of your reaction does not escape you. You almost cry. The peaches, glowing behind metal like tiny suns in syrup, seem impossibly luxurious. After months of the same rations, your stomach lurches at the thought of sweetness. You clutch the can to your chest for a moment before setting it down like something sacred. You remember the food you eat now. Bully beef, they call it. Once, it might have been meat. Now, it is simply a gray, fibrous substance that resists classification. It smells like damp wool and disappointment. Some days it tastes like nothing. Other days it tastes worse. You've long since stopped trying to figure out what part of the animal it comes from. You trade it for nearly anything, and today, you do. The peaches become currency. Precious, golden currency. For one small tin, you manage to trade your way to 2 extra tea bags, a dollop of jam smeared into wax paper, and, most miraculously of all, half a chocolate bar someone has been hoarding since October. The chocolate is soft and slightly melted. You break it into pieces, distributing them one by one. No one thanks you out loud. They just nod. And the nods are enough. Later, there is the ritual of rum. Not always available, but when it is, it becomes a moment of reverence. Issued by the quartermaster in small metal cups, just enough to coat your tongue and fool your body into thinking warmth is returning. One sip does not heat your blood, but it sparks a memory of when something once did. You drink it slowly, rolling it around your mouth like a fine wine. The taste is sharp and slightly sweet, with a bite that feels like it might erase the taste of damp biscuits and gunpowder. One soldier swears the rum helps clean the rust from his rifle. Another insists it gives him night vision. You do not join the joke. You are too lost in your own moment, savoring the drop as if it were the last liquid joy on earth. You try to brush your teeth. Or at least make the attempt. There is no toothbrush, only a chalky powder stored in a twist of paper that someone insists is mint-flavored. It is not. You chew it until your jaw aches and your tongue grows dry. Your breath still smells of iron and morning breath and sadness. But you do it anyway. Because hygiene is no longer about cleanliness. It is about the pretense of normalcy. It is about reminding yourself that you are still human. You use a shard of mirror to check your teeth. The glass is cracked and cloudy, but it does the job. Your teeth are yellowing. One feels loose. You nudge it with your tongue and feel a deep discomfort settle in your gut. You know what it means. You've heard the stories passed down the line in hushed tones. Gums blackening. Teeth falling out. A silent ache that grows louder with every missed orange. Scurvy, fresh fruit is a rare blessing in the trenches. Once in a while, a box of oranges shows up. A crate of lemons makes its way to the front. But more often than not, you are left with dry biscuits, oily tea, and tins filled with meat that defies description. Your body has stopped asking for vitamins. It now whispers its needs and symptoms. Historians will one day debate how serious the threat really was. Some will claim that rations were sufficient, that the army accounted for nutrition. Others will write long papers about broken supply chains and spoiled shipments. But you know the truth. Your gums know. Your stomach knows. Your bones know. You begin to chew slower now. Each bite a negotiation. You whisper quiet apologies to your teeth as you gnaw through hardtack and smear jam with a knife dulled by dirt. But there are not many choices. Dinner remains stubbornly predictable. Bully beef. Dry biscuit. Weak tea. A slice of something vaguely root-like. Occasionally, soup. The soup is thin, mostly hot water with a few specks of color floating in it. A lonely slice of carrot. A ghost of potato. Once, you swear you saw a chunk of meat. Or at least something meat adjacent. You choose to believe it. On rare, almost mythical days, someone receives a parcel with real butter. You would trade your coat for it. You might even trade one of your boots. Not both. Just one. You hear stories passed along the trench. A man received a tin of sardines and kept it tucked under his shirt as he slept, fending off rats with a bayonet. Another was gifted a bottle of brandy and drank it all in one glorious go, then passed out with a smile and never woke up again. No one is sure where he went. He might have been transferred. Or buried. It becomes just another name you stop asking about, you begin to hoard. Bits of biscuit wrapped in handkerchiefs. The end of a sugar cube tucked inside your sock. A corner of jam tin hidden under your pack. You feel ashamed, but also a little triumphant. In the trenches, a man with a sugar cube is a king. One day, a rat finds your hoard. You discover the remains in the morning. The wrapper has been chewed into the shape of a grin. You laugh. You pretend it is funny. Now and then, the quartermaster organizes something called a special ration day to boost morale. A lie, but a welcome one. On those days, you might receive baked beans or a spoonful of marmalade. Once, you were handed a dry cake shaped like a heart. It crumbled in your fingers. You stared at it for a full minute before eating it. It brought no luck. But for 10 seconds, it brought hope. Tea time becomes holy. It has nothing to do with the tea itself. The drink is watery and tastes faintly of tin and smoke. But the act matters. The boiling of water over a fire made from scrap wood, ration boxes, and half-burned letters. The stirring with a pocket knife. The tin cup, dented and scalded, passed from hand to hand. In that moment, with steam curling into the sky, you pretend the world still has structure. Tea is comfort. Tea is ritual. Tea is defiance. You imagine home. You see porcelain cups with painted rims. A matching set. A sugar bowl. The sound of a kettle whistling. A familiar voice humming a tune in the next room. You close your eyes and chase the taste through memory. Then, without warning, a shell lands nearby. 3 trenches over. The ground shakes. The dream is gone. You return to your dugout slowly, breath fogging in the cold. Your stomach growls, not just from hunger, but from remembering what real food once felt like. You open your notebook and write a short entry: breakfast, tea and mud; lunch, hope and biscuit; dinner, despair with a jam chaser. You chuckle, low and dry. Pickle, always nearby, adds his own flourish. And for dessert, he says, a generous helping of existential dread. Someone laughs. A genuine, warm laugh. Then a soldier next to you holds out a final offering. A single bite of plum, dark and soft and glistening in the dim light. You shake your head politely. He insists. You take it. It is sweet. Unreasonably so. The taste spreads across your tongue like a stolen treasure. It fills the cracks. It coats the day. You sit side by side, the two of you, not speaking. Teeth aching. Stomachs not quite full. But for the first time in weeks, maybe even months, you feel something close to contentment, almost okay. The sun is down again, though calling it sun feels like a kindness the sky doesn't deserve. It never truly rises here anymore. It only drifts, like an old memory, fading from one shade of gray to another until it disappears completely. And now, as you crouch beside the parapet, it has finally surrendered to the dark. Not a peaceful dark, but a smothering one. The air is thick with a sour fog that clings to your face and crawls into your collar. It smells of wet bandages, scorched wood, rust, and old sweat. You are on night watch. Again. Your rifle rests across your knees. Your eyes strain open. Your heart keeps pace. For the moment, your sight slowly begins to adjust to the blackness. At first, the world is a formless blur. But then it begins to shape itself. Everything turns to silhouettes. A pale sky above blackened beams. Blurred outlines of broken crates. The line of sandbags cut sharply against a deeper shadow behind them. The whole trench becomes a still life in charcoal. The outlines are soft but the edges feel sharp. Then, just beyond the rim of your vision, you see it, movement. You do not blink. You do not breathe. Every part of your body tenses all at once. Your back stiffens. Your arms lock. Your legs press downward into the boards beneath you. Even your heartbeat pauses, waiting for a verdict. Slowly, without making a sound, you reach for the periscope. You raise it, inch by inch, just high enough to see over the top of the trench. You sweep the narrow field of view slowly. You search for any sign of life or death or something in between. There is nothing. You lower the scope again, your hands trembling slightly now, your throat tight. You swallow against the tension, and just as your breath begins to return, there it is again. A flicker. A slight shimmer just beyond the corner of your vision. Not a figure, not a form, but a light. Faint. Unnatural. Pale green. You turn and look directly at it. There, half submerged in the churned mud near the wire, lies a body. Or what is left of one. And it is glowing. Not brightly. Not enough to light the path. But just enough to make your stomach twist. You do not flinch. The sight doesn't startle you anymore. It's familiar now. You've seen this before. You've heard the others talk about it during long nights on the fire step. Someone once explained it in scientific terms. A sergeant who had studied biology before the war said it was phosphorescent bacteria. Microbes that lived on rotting wood. And rotting flesh. They said under the right conditions, those tiny life forms feed and glow, painting the skin of the dead with a pale, ghostly light. Greenish. Cold. Almost peaceful, the men call it angel light. A name that sounds gentler than it should. You wish it were something more poetic. A sign. A message. A promise. But nothing stays poetic here. Out here, poetry is stripped down to survival. You shift your weight on the fire step, wincing as your boots make a soft squelch against the duckboards. The wooden planks are always slick beneath your soles. Sometimes it is rain that makes them so. Other times, it is worse. You know better than to ask what causes the darker stains. It is safer not to know. Safer not to think too much. A quiet voice drifts out from one of the dugouts nearby. Low and indistinct. Someone muttering. Perhaps a prayer. Perhaps the fragments of a dream still clinging to the edge of waking. You cannot tell. The line between dreams and reality has thinned to a whisper in this place. Your arm itches. You scratch it without thinking, then wince as your fingernails catch on a swollen bite. The lice are still at you. They never stop. One has burrowed deep, and it bites hard enough to draw a thin bead of blood. You whisper a curse and press your hand against it. A rat scurries past your foot, fat and bold, vanishing into the gaps in the wall like it owns the place. High above, you hear a shift in the wind. A soft hiss through the wire. You duck automatically, heart tensing, body braced. But nothing comes. Just wind. Then, from across the wide expanse of no man's land, a voice begins to sing. It is low. Slow. Deep and mournful. The melody drifts through the darkness like a memory. It is not in English. The tune is unfamiliar. But it carries. It weaves through the night air with a kind of haunting grace, like a lullaby intended for no one in particular, or for everyone who has died. You listen without moving. Pickle appears beside you, stepping lightly, eyes forward. He nods toward the direction of the sound. They sing to keep warm, he murmurs. His voice is barely louder than the wind. Then, after a pause, he adds, or maybe they sing so the ghosts know who's still alive. You choose not to ask which he believes more. You swap places without speaking. Pickle climbs up to take the fire step. You descend from it, bones aching, and shuffle to your dugout. It is a narrow space, no bigger than a wooden coffin tipped on its side. You crouch, then lie flat. Your shoulders press into the damp walls. Your rifle lies next to you like a second spine. The wood above your head drips. Water seeps through the cracks in steady rhythm. Each drop lands with a soft splatter on the board beside your ear. It should annoy you, but the repetition is soothing. Until you remember what lies beneath those boards, you sit up slowly. You remove your boot. Your sock comes away with it, soaked and clinging. Your foot underneath is pale and swollen. The skin is soft and pruned. Your big toe is starting to turn a deep shade of purple, edging toward black. The color creeps across the flesh like a shadow that cannot be stopped. You reach for the tin of whale oil. You smear it thickly over your skin. Your fingers are numb and stiff, but you rub anyway, trying to force life back into the flesh. You do not know if it will help. You only know it is what you are supposed to do. A shout rings out somewhere above. Not close. But not far. You freeze, ears straining. Then silence. A false alarm. Someone thought they saw something. You do not even flinch. Your body has stopped reacting to fear unless it arrives with certainty. You lie back and stare at the beams above your head. They creak softly. Every step from the trench above sends vibrations through the roof. You imagine you are living beneath the deck of a wooden ship. Or maybe inside a coffin waiting to be sealed. Eventually, sleep arrives. It does not drift in softly. It grabs you without grace and pulls you down. You dream of chairs that don't wobble, of tables with warm bread, of lamps that shine steady without swinging in the breeze. You dream of dry floors, of thick socks, of simple, solid things that once made life feel permanent. And then, hands are on your shoulders, gas mask drill. You scramble up, heart still in your throat. Your fingers search in the dark for the canvas pouch. You fumble with the clasps, pull the straps tight, and slip the mask over your face. The world becomes muffled. Each breath is drawn through rubber and filter. The air tastes like rubber, sweat, and old tea. You sit in the dark, surrounded by the sound of breath. Yours. The others. All of it fogging the night. Then, after 5 long minutes, the all clear comes. It was just a test. You peel off the mask and wipe the sweat from your cheeks. The straps have left angry red lines across your face. You breathe in deep and taste metal. And something else. Fear, maybe. You lie down again, but sleep is gone. Your ears are too sharp now. Listening to every detail, the drip of water from the ceiling. The quiet rustle of fur as a rat finds a new hiding place, the soft, muttered curses of men trapped in dreams they never wanted to return to, and sometimes, worse than all of that, a groan. A name called out into the dark. A whisper of something familiar. A woman's voice, imagined. A child's name. A brother's. Sometimes, heartbreakingly, the name of someone who died only days ago, and sometimes, the name they call is your own. There will be studies, years from now, about what did more damage to the minds of the soldiers. The endless bombardments that shook the earth and tore bodies to pieces. Or the nights. The long, still, suffocating nights. Most agree that the worst came with silence. That the dark was more dangerous than the guns. You understand this now. You get maybe 3 hours of sleep. None of it restful. You wake up aching. Your back stiff. Your neck sore. Your scalp itches again, crawling with tiny things you can't see. You sit up slowly. You press your hands to your face and breathe. You are still here, outside. The sky is trying to become morning. It struggles. The light is dull and lifeless. A dirty iron gray that suggests the sun might never fully return. Pickle hands you a tin cup filled with tea. He does not speak. He just passes it to you. You lift it to your lips. It is already cold, but it is something. You are not a miner. You have never been trained to swing a pickaxe or read the language of shifting soil. And yet, here you are, standing at the edge of a tunnel with a shovel in one hand and a silent prayer in the other. They call you a sapper now. It sounds impressive, almost regal, like something out of a storybook, as if you are some medieval warrior chipping away beneath a castle wall. It has a kind of ceremonial weight to it. But the truth is far more brutal. In reality, it is just a grim shorthand for a soldier who has been told to dig toward the enemy and to try not to die while doing it. The entrance to the tunnel is barely visible, hidden beneath a flap of canvas and a scatter of mud meant to disguise it from anyone passing above. Beneath it lies a shaft that descends steeply into the earth, a dark throat lined with rotting beams and choked with the smell of mildew, body odor, and something more ancient. The scent of fear has a particular weight down here. It settles in the lungs. You lower yourself in slowly, gripping the wooden rungs of a ladder that groans with every step. Your boots clank against the metal nails hammered into the sides. The light above fades quickly, replaced by a suffocating blackness that presses in from all sides. There is no wind down here. No rain. No sky. The air is still, stale, and thick with dust. The walls are damp to the touch, and the ceiling droops in places where the supports have begun to bow. You can feel the weight of the world above you. You can feel it pressing down with every breath. You light your lantern. It flickers once, then steadies into a thin orange glow that casts long shadows along the walls. You blink several times, trying to adjust to the dimness. Then you move forward, bent nearly double, the ceiling just inches from your helmet. You are told your orders are simple. Help the team dig slowly and silently in the direction of the German trench. Use the small pickaxe provided, which is barely larger than a child's hammer. Make as little noise as possible. Because sound travels underground. And if they hear you digging, they will begin digging toward you. They will build their own tunnel, their own trap, and somewhere in the middle, your paths may meet. Not for a handshake. Not for diplomacy. But for destruction. There are stories about such meetings. Old legends passed between soldiers like secrets. Stories of two teams tunneling toward each other, separated by no more than a few feet of soil. They say you can hear each other breathing through the earth. They say sometimes you can even hear a whispered curse or a prayer. Then comes the explosion. And the silence afterward. The air here tastes metallic. The tunnel walls sweat with moisture. Your shirt clings to your back. The space is barely wide enough to fit your shoulders. You dig anyway. Each swing of the pick sends small echoes through the shaft. You pause between every few strikes, straining your ears. Listening. You do not speak. Nobody speaks. Talking is for people who are not waiting to die beneath the surface of the world. You listen for sounds. A soft drip of water. The faint crack of timber. The hollow thud of shifting earth. Or the worst sound of all, the sharp, rhythmic tap of a foreign pickaxe. You pray that what you hear is your own team. You beg whatever powers are left in the universe that it is not theirs. There are arguments, still, among scholars and historians. Some claim tunneling was essential, that it changed the shape of the war and gave the Allies an edge in breaking the stalemates above. Others insist it was just another cruelty in a war already full of them. What cannot be denied is this: when one of those underground charges was detonated, it erased entire portions of the battlefield. Hundreds of pounds of ammo packed into a single chamber, waiting to be ignited. The explosion would create craters the size of ponds. Many still exist today. Silent, overgrown, and deep enough to hold the ghosts of the men they consumed. Your tunnel, the one you crawl through now, is meant for that purpose. A chamber is being carved out up ahead. Men are preparing the wiring. They are moving slowly, carefully, with hands that tremble just slightly. One wrong move, and the earth would swallow you whole. You try not to picture it. Someone behind you taps your shoulder and passes forward a tin. You tilt it toward your lips. Tea. Barely warm, barely tea, but still precious. You sip carefully, the liquid tasting faintly of smoke and rust. Above you, loose soil shifts and drops gently onto your helmet. You spit twice. The dirt is everywhere. It coats your lips, your tongue, your ears. It has settled beneath your fingernails and into the creases of your eyes. It lives inside you now. Later, you lean against a wooden brace to rest. It groans under your weight. You freeze. You do not move. No one around you moves. The beam settles with a soft crack. You release the breath you were holding, but your hands remain tense. You remember Morgan. He was on this team before you. A quiet lad, always polite, always whistling a low tune. He had a talent for cards and a calmness that steadied the group. He was working on a shaft near the old oak when it gave way. The collapse buried him completely. They dug for hours but never reached him. Eventually, command told them to seal the entrance and send a letter home. His parents were told he died in combat. And that was true. He just happened to die under 50 feet of soil, rather than under enemy fire. You grip your pick tighter and dig faster. Your back throbs. Your hands are covered in blisters that have broken open and bled into your gloves. The lantern's flame dims, but it does not go out. You trade shifts with another man. He steps forward, his eyes dull, his face unreadable. No words are exchanged. None are needed. Down here, conversation feels like a luxury you cannot afford. When your time underground ends, you climb the ladder and return to the trench above. You expect relief, but the air outside burns your nostrils. After hours below, the world feels too open. Too bright. The sky looks enormous, terrifying in its scale. The wind bites at your face, and you flinch at the sound of distant artillery. You realize, suddenly, that you felt safer underground. Down in the dark, the world was small and controlled. Up here, anything could happen. You clean your tools. The dust refuses to come off. It is in the fabric of your uniform. It has settled deep into your skin. You eat a can of beans, though you do not taste it. You chew a crust of bread until it becomes paste in your mouth. Then someone speaks. There is a new rumor. The Germans are digging again, 2 trenches over. They say, a tunnel collapsed last week. 3 men were inside. Only 1 came out. The survivors claim they heard breathing through the walls before the ceiling gave way. The enemy, they said, had been no more than a few inches away. Close enough to hear a cough. Close enough to whisper. You laugh. So does everyone else. Someone starts humming the theme from The Great Escape, even though the movie has not yet been made. Another claims he is digging a private tunnel straight to Paris. You chuckle. You share the jokes. But you do not laugh too loudly. You remember where you are. The ground is always listening. Night comes. You are assigned to tunnel watch. It is a simple job. You lie on your belly, ear pressed flat against the wooden floor, listening for sounds. Every creak is potential danger. Every scratch could mean something worse. You listen for hours. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your heart slows to match the stillness, and then you hear it, tap. Tap. Pause, it might be the wind. It might be water. It might be nothing, tap. Tap. Silence, you report it. The officer nods, barely reacting. He says it could be anything. Could be rats. Could be the earth settling. You are not reassured, you go back to your position. Eventually, word spreads. One of the other teams is ready. A charge has been set. You are pulled from your dugout before sunrise and told to brace for impact. Then it happens. You feel it before you hear it, the ground beneath you tightens, as if it is drawing breath. Then comes the explosion, a sound beyond sound. A force that moves through your spine and rattles your teeth. The trench shakes. The walls tremble. A wave of pressure crashes through your chest. The sky turns dark as the earth rises, flinging soil and stone high into the air. Then comes the stillness. Not silence, but something deeper. A stunned quiet. An aftermath, there is no cheering. Just wide eyes. And a hole in the ground where men used to be. They say the mine was packed with thousands of pounds of explosives. The detonation wiped out an entire German position. 50 soldiers. Maybe more. The blast lifted the ground by 10 feet. Then it settled again, as if the land itself exhaled. You never see the crater. You hear about it in passing, like a ghost story. But you understand, the next day, you go back underground. Your helmet rests snug against your brow. Your lantern flickers but stays lit. Your pickaxe feels heavier than before, and the dirt is waiting for you, always the dirt. You hear your name being spoken, not shouted, not barked like a command, but called in a way that barely rises above the ambient sounds of the trench. The voice is low, soft, and strangely calm, as if it has traveled out of a half-remembered dream or emerged from the mist of memory. You blink slowly, trying to separate sleep from reality. Your skin is sticky with sweat, your body damp beneath the stiff folds of your uniform, and for a brief moment you think it might still be night. But it is not a dream. It is real. Someone is crouched beside you, crouched low to keep their head beneath the parapet. Their face is streaked with dried mud, eyes wide and shining with urgency, wounded. East Sector. They need stretcher bearers. There is no room for hesitation. You push yourself upright, though your muscles groan with resistance. Your knees crack. Your shoulders ache from yesterday's digging. Your stomach churns from the stew you forced down the night before, the one with half-cooked turnip chunks floating in a grease-slick broth. But none of that matters. You reach for your gear and follow the figure out of the dugout and into the pale morning without speaking a word. You are not a medic. You have never been trained to diagnose or suture or comfort. But today, it does not matter. Today, you are part of the rescue effort. Today, you carry what needs carrying. The air outside is thick with smoke that clings to your skin and seeps into your throat with every breath. A light drizzle falls from the sky in a steady mist, soaking the mud walls of the trench until they begin to collapse inward, warping the wooden boards and turning the floor beneath your boots into a slippery path of rot and muck. Your coat grows heavier with every step, fabric soaking through. The air is sharp with the smell of blood. You notice it before you see the source. It has a distinct, metallic tang. Strong. Unmistakable. The scent blends with cordite and soil, forming a stench that crawls up your nostrils and stays there. You reach the forward line, or what is left of it. The trench has suffered a hard night. Shells ripped it apart, and now it lies half-collapsed and broken. Sandbags have exploded, spilling their contents like ruptured organs. Planks meant to hold the walls firm have snapped and twisted at unnatural angles. You navigate around debris. Your foot brushes against a helmet, lying upside down in the mud. It is still warm. You step over it without pausing. A man lies nearby, crumpled in a heap, half buried by the collapsed edge of the trench. His leg is bent in a way no leg should ever bend. And each breath he takes comes with a wet groan. He tries to speak, but the effort fails. You kneel beside him, and with another soldier, you begin to lift. The motion pulls a scream from him, sharp and high. Then his body goes limp, and you realize he has passed out. You are grateful. Unconsciousness will make the journey quicker. The stretcher is barely wide enough to hold him, and the path back is not straight. The route zigzags through the trench, switching direction every few paces. A straight path is a risk, an invitation for artillery to strike. The pattern of war favors the crooked. You move as fast as you can. Your arms burn from the weight. Your fingers begin to cramp. Your shoulders throb with the strain of carrying a man whose life now depends on your ability to not drop him. At one point, you slip. The ground beneath you disappears into sludge, and your knee sinks. The man lets out a groan. You bite your lip, grip the handles tighter, and lift again. You do not let him fall. It takes nearly 20 minutes to reach the nearest aid post, though it feels more like an eternity pressed into your chest. The dugout has been transformed into a makeshift hospital. The air inside reeks of something sharp and sterile, like iodine, but beneath it lingers another odor. Despair. The kind that clings to the walls and soaks into the bandages piled in the corner. A medic glances up, gestures at a wooden platform. Put him there, he barks, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. You obey. The medic looks barely older than you, maybe a year, maybe two. His uniform is soaked through. His face is pale. But his hands move quickly and without hesitation. He grabs a pair of scissors and slices through the wounded man's trousers. The fabric parts to reveal a deep wound already turning the bandages red. He wraps it tight. The cloth stains instantly. He leans down, asks for the soldier's name. There is no answer. Next, he says, not unkindly, just automatically, you step outside into the open air. Rain falls harder now, cutting into your skin with 1,000 needles. You let it run down your face. Another call comes from the left. Wounded. Need more hands. You go again. Of course you do. Historians will one day write about the medical system in place during this war. Some will claim it worked. Others will point out its many flaws. There were aid posts at the front, casualty stations further back, and hospitals even further still. But none of them could keep up with the volume. Not really. Infection remained the true enemy. Bullets and shrapnel might wound you, but it was bacteria that came to finish the job. They pour iodine directly into wounds. They stuff gashes with coarse gauze. Sometimes these methods succeed. Other times, they buy a man only a few more hours. Triage is ruthless. A man with a stomach wound is laid gently on a blanket. The medic administers a shot of morphine. That is all. No more is offered. He won't make it, the medic whispers. You want to protest. But you know. Instead of arguing, you nod. Then you turn around and make your way back to the line. You pass another stretcher. The man on it is singing. Loud and off-key. A broken rendition of Waltzing Matilda that echoes down the trench. You step aside and let him pass. Whether the medic sees him or not, you cannot say. Inside the dugout, you glance toward the corner. There is a pile of boots stacked carelessly. You realize some of them still have feet inside. You avert your eyes. You pretend you did not see. A man, delirious with blood loss, grabs your collar with surprising strength. He pulls your face close to his and whispers a plea. "Write to my mum," he says. You nod. He murmurs her name. The name of her town. Then, strangely, the name of her dog. Then he slips away. Quiet. Still, that night, you keep your promise. You sit down by candlelight and press your pencil to paper. You write a letter to a mother you will never meet. You tell her her son fought bravely. You tell her he smiled at the end. You leave out the parts she doesn't need to know. You do not mention the stench. Or the boots in the corner. Pickle sits nearby. He has no particular task. But he sharpens his knife anyway. The sound of stone scraping steel fills the space. "Back in the saddle tomorrow," he says. You nod. You both know that saddle is made not of leather, but of mud, blood, and exhaustion. Dawn breaks with another barrage. The sky shudders. You press your palms to your ears. You feel the vibrations ripple through your ribs. It never really ends. It only pauses. The wounded arrive in waves now. More stretchers. More groans. More faces twisted in pain. One boy stumbles in. He cannot be older than 16. His hands are clutched to his abdomen, red and trembling. He is sobbing. You guide him gently to the wall and ease him down. His tears do not stop, but his voice grows softer. You take your sleeve and wipe his cheeks. You hum a few bars of nothing in particular. A rhythm. A comfort. He does not speak. He just closes his eyes. The medic kneels beside him, lifts the tunic, and winces. That look says everything. The boy is still breathing when you lift his stretcher and carry him to the rear. You say nothing. You simply walk, one foot after the other, your arms numb. At the casualty clearing station, the world changes. The air is clearer. The smell is less sharp. There is music playing somewhere, an old phonograph spinning a tune through crackling static. A nurse presses a cup of tea into your hand. It is real tea. Hot. Dark. Comforting. You drink too quickly and burn your tongue. You sit for a moment on a wooden bench. Just a moment. Longer than allowed. You stare down at your hands. They are trembling. Still, you rise. Because it is not over. There are more. There are always more. You have thought about it, not in a detailed, mapped-out sort of way. Not as part of some grand plan with routes and supplies and a final destination. But the idea has been there. Quiet. Still. Lingering in the shadows of your thoughts like a cigarette you carry but never light. Desertion. The word sits behind your eyes when you lie awake. It flickers into focus when the wind howls too long or when a shell lands closer than it should. It hides behind fatigue and despair. You do not welcome it. But you do not push it away either. You are not the only one. You have seen others wrestling with it. You have noticed the long silences. The moments when a soldier stares at the horizon, not looking at anything in particular. Just staring into the distance as if he could see something beyond the mud and barbed wire. You have caught the twitch of a finger tracing the edge of a map during downtime, as if memorizing a path to somewhere better. You have heard the whispered questions passed like contraband from trench to trench. How far is the coast? What if you slipped away during night patrol? What happens if you lie still in the mud and pretend to be dead, but most of the time, you do not ask anything. You simply keep moving. Keep cleaning your rifle. Keep standing where you are told to stand. The whispers continue. You hear talk of a soldier who vanished during a fog, his silhouette swallowed by mist and never seen again. Another man reportedly slipped away while cleaning the latrine, ducked behind the dugout and never came back. One tale claims someone tried to hide inside a supply crate, hoping to be loaded onto a wagon and shipped to the rear with the rations. That one did not go well. You see him later. A week after he tried, he is tied to a post. Not as a figure of speech. Not in some metaphorical, symbolic way. He is physically bound to a wooden post hammered into the earth near the officer's station. Ropes around his wrists. A grim stillness in his body. The court-martial takes place in the open. You hear bits of it drift on the wind. He is accused of abandoning his post. 2 others testify that he ran during a gas attack, dropped everything and fled. He says he was chasing a runner, someone who vanished into the cloud of smoke. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't. There is no real investigation. The verdict comes quickly. Too quickly, they call it shot at dawn. It is a phrase that burns itself into your thoughts. It does not go away. It echoes in the silent hours. It lingers in your ears longer than any shell blast. The next morning, the sentence is read aloud. A small group gathers to witness it. No one claps. No one speaks. Everyone stands still, rooted to the spot by some combination of fear and respect and something that feels like shame. The condemned man stands as straight as he can. His eyes do not dart around. His hands do not tremble. His boots are caked in the same thick trench mud that weighs down yours. His uniform is torn at the elbow, and one sleeve hangs loose. He does not plead. He does not cry. He just waits. The sack is placed gently over his head. His wrists are bound. The firing squad takes their places. Some of them having volunteered, others having drawn lots or been ordered. The officer raises his arm. His voice cuts through the morning, ready. You turn away before the word fire is spoken. You do not need to hear it. You do not want to see it. Later, historians will write papers. They will tally numbers. Some will say 200 men were executed for cowardice during the war. Others will say more. Some will insist those men were eventually pardoned, years after the last shell was fired. But none of that matters here. None of it matters to the trenches. Because the trenches remember. They remember all of it. You do not talk about it afterward. No one does. The subject becomes like a shadow cast in the wrong direction. It stays near, but no one points to it. Still, the thought persists. It clings to you. If your foot goes bad completely, if the rot creeps up your leg and the pain becomes too much, if your mind cracks like porcelain dropped on stone, would you do it? Would you run? You do not know, so you keep your head down. You clean your rifle when told. You report for roll call. You nod when the officer says that tomorrow your unit will rotate back to support. You do not say that support still means listening to shells fall. Still means lice biting your ankles. Still means shoveling waste into buckets. But with slightly fewer bullets. Slightly, you learn how to vanish without disappearing. How to avoid notice without retreating. You slow your steps when there is a call for labor detail. You volunteer for tasks like inventory or mess duty. You linger near the back during formation. You do just enough to remain in the machine. Without being pushed to its front edge, there is a line between cowardice and survival. It is not painted clearly. It shifts. It bends. But you learn to balance on it. Everyone does, and then there is Tanner, who always kept his boots polished, even in the mud. Tanner, who wrote long letters in tiny handwriting. Tanner, who stopped laughing 2 weeks ago and never started again. One day, Tanner writes a letter. He folds it with care. Smooths the edges. Tucks it into his breast pocket. Then he steps onto the fire step during a moment of quiet. A lull in the gunfire. He climbs up and walks into no man's land, no rifle. No helmet. No cover, you shout his name. So do others. The cry rips from your throat without permission. But no one fires. No one knows what to do. No one moves, he walks halfway to the enemy line. Then he lowers himself to the ground. He kneels. Then he sits. He waits, for a long moment, nothing happens, then a single shot cracks through the silence. You do not know where it came from. British side. German side. A nervous hand. A deliberate trigger. It is impossible to say. Tanner does not rise. When night falls, someone crawls out and retrieves his body. They bring back the letter too. It contains only a few lines. It says, "I couldn't do it anymore. I hope you understand." And you do, you truly do. But understanding it does not make it easier. Understanding it does not stop the ache behind your eyes. It does not erase the cold knot in your stomach. The following day, a chaplain visits the trench. He speaks about courage. About sacrifice. About duty and redemption. He uses words with hard edges. But they land softly. Almost no one listens. Most of the men stare at the mud or at their boots or at the blank sky. That evening, Pickle sits beside you, quietly sharpening a spoon. There is no real need for it. No practical reason. But he keeps at it, dragging the metal edge across a flat rock with slow determination. After a while, he looks up and says, "Think they'll shoot me if I forget to tie my boots?" You do not laugh. He does not either. That night, you write another letter. You send it home. You say the usual things. That you are holding up. That the food still tastes like boiled wood. That the trench smells exactly as it always has. That you dreamed of apples again. The sweet kind. Crisp. Cold from the cellar. You do not mention Tanner. You do not mention the firing squad. You do not write about the way your name seems to echo in the dark when you are trying to sleep. You end the letter with the only truth you can offer. Tell them I'm still here. Then you pause, and you ask yourself, for how long? The sky above you looks exactly as it did the day before. And the day before that. That same dull, washed-out shade of gray, like someone had started painting the heavens and given up halfway. A color that has no name, no definition. Just a smear of exhaustion above your head. But something feels different today, though you can't place what. Not at first, it begins with a whisper. A single sentence, barely loud enough to be noticed. Pickle is the first to say it. He leans in close while adjusting the strap on his helmet, and in a voice more cautious than hopeful, says, "They say the Krauts are packing up." You don't react at first. Words like that float through the trench all the time. Like smoke from a fire that never quite goes out. But then Ellis, who rarely speaks at all, passes by and says, "I heard a runner say we're pulling back. Something big's happening." Later, a junior officer, face unreadable and coat buttoned to the throat, walks past your dugout. He says nothing but two words. "Stand ready." He does not pause. He does not look back. That is when it starts to feel real. The mood begins to shift. Voices grow quieter. Faces start turning toward one another, searching for confirmation, for clarity, for anything that makes sense. Information trickles down like cold water through sandbags, never complete, never direct, always missing something. But the message forms anyway. Fragile and impossible, the war is ending, you hear it again. Again. It circles the trench, picked up and passed on like contraband. The war is ending. The officers know. The brass hats have already shaken hands. The papers are being signed, somewhere far away. Somewhere dry. Somewhere clean. You imagine a ballroom or a government building, chandeliers glowing softly overhead, suits freshly pressed, champagne glasses raised in a toast while the mud still clings to your knees and blood dries stiff on your sleeves. It does not feel real. You have been in this trench so long, you have stopped measuring time by anything other than decay. Socks wearing thin. Fingernails going black. The number of lice pulled from your collar seams. The number of letters that never came. The number of shellings that passed you by without your name on them, but now, they say, the guns will stop, at 11 o'clock, on the 11th day of the 11th month. You repeat the phrase to yourself, slowly, trying to give it weight. 11. 11. 11. You do not know how to prepare for silence. Your body is trained for noise, for ducking at the right moment, for tensing at the thud of distant fire. Some men begin to cry. The tears are sudden and without warning. Others laugh, the sound high and strange, almost foreign in the air. One soldier starts cleaning his rifle with more focus than anyone has shown in days, polishing it with the same care one might use for a pocket watch or a wedding ring. Another pulls a small comb from his pack, as if it had been waiting for this moment, hidden for months. He smooths his hair and adjusts his collar as though he were going to church, not standing knee-deep in mud. Pickle is beside you again. He stares down at his hands and says quietly, "I don't know what to do with these." You look at your own hands, covered in grime, calloused, cracked, scarred. You nod, you don't know either. At 10:58. Someone begins to hum. You can't tell who. It's not loud, just a low vibration carried through the trench. At 10:59, the sound fades, and everything goes quiet. Not just your section, not just your company, but the entire line. Men freeze in place. Conversations stop mid-word. It is as if the world itself is waiting to breathe, and then, 11, the guns stop. No whistle blows. No bugle calls. No officer gives a speech. It just happens. The pounding, crashing rhythm that has filled your days and nights ceases all at once, like someone pressed their palm against the mouth of war. The silence is huge. It fills your ears, overwhelms your chest. The absence of sound is louder than the noise ever was. You are stunned by it. You feel it pressing against your skull. Your heartbeat becomes the loudest thing you can hear. It pounds in your chest, a reminder that you are still here. For the first time in what feels like years, you hear the wind as it moves through the trench. You hear it rustle loose canvas and tug at the edges of tattered uniforms. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls out. You had forgotten what bird sounded like. You don't know what to do next. Someone cheers. It's quiet, unsure. Then another voice joins. And then another. A ripple of sound, cautious at first, then louder. Some men begin to climb out of the trench, slowly, as if the ground itself might resist their weight. You follow them. Your legs feel stiff, uncertain. You place one foot after another with care. Above you, the sky yawns wide. For the first time, it does not feel like a lid pressed down. It feels open. Expansive. Possible. You step into no man's land. The place that has always meant death. The place of shattered bodies and shredded dreams. And yet today, for the first time, it does not feel like a graveyard. It feels like ground waiting for footsteps. There are bodies here. Of course. Some from yesterday. Some older. You walk around them gently, almost reverently. You find yourself whispering small apologies to the silence, as if your movement might disturb something sacred. Across the blasted field, you see shapes rising from the opposite trench. German soldiers. They climb slowly, cautiously. One of them raises a hand, just a little. A wave. You hesitate, then raise your hand in return. No rifles. No shouts. Just men. Alive. You begin walking toward the center. So do they. Your boots press into the soft dirt. Each step feels like a decision. Like the world might change with every pace. You meet in the middle. And there are hands. Not weapons. Hands, historians will later say the armistice ended the fighting, but not the war within the hearts of those who fought it. They will say that peace was complicated. That it arrived carrying guilt and sorrow and more questions than answers. You feel that truth already. You carry it, later, back in your dugout, you sit down slowly. You set your rifle beside you. You look at it. You clean it out of habit. The motion gives your fingers something to do. The metal is cold. Familiar, you strike a match and light a cigarette. The smoke curls in the still air. Your hands tremble. Not from fear. Not from cold. Just because they do not know what else to do, Pickle appears beside you again. He lowers himself to the plank beside you and stares ahead. Now what? He asks. You do not respond. You do not know. So begins the winding down. The slow unwinding of tension that held you together. You lie back on your pack. You stare at the walls. The trench, once tight and choking, feels too open now. Too quiet. Your breath rises in the stillness, a soft rhythm. You feel your heart beating at a steady pace. Not panicked. Not hunted. Just steady. Like it remembers peace. Your body aches. Of course it does. Your knees throb. Your back complains. Your feet are sore, damp, bruised. But none of it feels urgent. The pain is background now. Just part of what you carry. There is space inside you now. A kind of hollowness. Not empty. But waiting. Like sleep at the edge of thought. You think about Carl. About Jenkins. About the boy who sang until the blood in his lungs turned his voice to silence. You think about Harold the pigeon. About the smell of the mud after rain. About the steam from a tin of tea clutched in cold hands. You think about the letter in your coat pocket. The one you never sent. The one you folded 3 times and never found the courage to sign. Maybe you will send it tomorrow. Maybe not. For now, you close your eyes, the trench recedes, the noise is gone, the war, at last, is quiet, and you, gentle listener, drift as well. Into calm. Into comfort. Into sleep. You are safe, you are warm.